States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Do you have any public comment other than about the ballot questions from the board?
I do. I just want to remind people that this Saturday is the homecoming and the homecoming parade, and right after that, there will be at 12:45 the ribbon cutting and dedication ceremony at the new school. And so we invite everybody there. The school does, and the school building committee. They'll have from 11 to 12 beforehand, they'll have a slideshow of the construction and self-guided tours of the building. And then after the ribbon cutting, after that, of course, is the homecoming football game, which will start 2 o'clock, is it? 2 o'clock. And I think we're playing Maynard. So everyone is invited this Saturday.
Okay, I have one announcement. Wednesday, tomorrow, October 19th, is the last day to register to vote in the November 2016 presidential election. The town clerk's office will be open all day, which is 9 a.m., and it will close at 8 p.m. to register voters. Thursday this week, they're open from 9 to 3, and as usual, they're closed on Friday. Is there any public comment other than on the ballot issues from the public? Please.
Kathy Murray, I'm here from Lunenburg Family Gift Mart, and we're here to request use of the TCP building to hold the Gift Mart event. Usually the event is held at St. Boniface, and due to a scheduling conflict, the building's unavailable this year. So we worked out a plan with John Londa yesterday to see if we could use the building, and we're here to ask the board's permission.
Can you tell us a little bit about Gift Mart so people at home would know what that is?
Sure. Lunenburg Family Gift Mart was established in 2009 because of a need that was identified in our community. Through the generosity of the community, we've been able to offer Lunenburg families a free holiday shopping day. It's a one-day invitation-only event, and guests are identified with the Lunenburg Food Bank and the school district. The guests receive an invitation, they register, and then they show up for the one-day shopping event. All of the donations are collected through the community. There's boxes in the schools and local businesses, Boys and Girls Club. So we collect all the donations. We ask for some monetary donations. We sort everything on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and put on a shopping event on Saturday. So last year we helped 108 families, 357 people in total, and this will be our 8th year. So we'd very much like to be able to hold the event.
Thank you. The group did meet with Mr. Londa, and he checked with the current tenants, and there are no major conflicts with using the building for that purpose for that couple of days.
What are the days that you'd be using it and time?
December 7th through the 10th. And I have the times. On the 7th, it'll be 3 in the afternoon until 8 p.m. On the 8th, 2 to 8. On the 9th, 9 to 8. And on the 10th, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. We will clean the building and leave it just as we found it. We've also talked to the Boys and Girls Club because we work closely with Michelle, and she had said, well, we've worked out some different ways to use the classrooms, but the Boys and Girls Club's being very helpful with the spaces that they use over there as well.
I support the concept, but since we've taken it over, the question becomes as far as securing the building before and after. Did John talk to you about who would lock up afterwards?
He did. He told us that he would work with us on that procedure.
Okay.
I'm in favor of it.
As am I, and I want to thank you for putting it on, and I know it really helps a lot of the families that are in need. So I would make a motion to approve use of the TCP for the Lunenburg Gift Mart as outlined.
Second.
Third.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
I have a question about donations. How do you get donations to you, and when you're shopping, how do you know what to get?
Okay. Anything that you would like to give or receive as a gift, anything that you would give to someone else. Toys and warm clothing are very popular items. So those,
Are the majority of the recipients children?
2/3 of our recipients are age 19 and under, and 1/3 is over age 19. So there are people who come for warm clothing for adults, and lots of people who come for toys for children. So, and there's a lot, there'll be a box at the library and at all the schools, one at the Boys and Girls Club, a lot of the salons have donation boxes, and we take monetary donations as well. By Thursday or Friday, we sort of figure out what kind of inventory do we have, and we know who's coming by then, because we have them register, so then we identify any holes we might have in our inventory, things that we need, and so with the monetary donations or the gift cards, then we go shopping on Friday to try to fill those holes.
That must be fun.
It is. It is. It's always fun.
So how do people get the checks to you?
There'll be an address on the poster that comes out, or I could send you an email with the information. I'll do that. I'll send you an email.
Okay, great.
Okay?
And when do the gift boxes, the donation boxes usually go out?
They should be going out within, by November 1st, I think we said, just confirming.
before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Right, they used to go out after Thanksgiving, but
It's too tight,
It is, it's too tight, and there's so many, they get full in a day, and
Well, if you send me an email,
logistically-
I'll announce when they're open. If you give me a list, I'll make an
So
announcement
we
for the
have,
public comment.
actually,
I
we
will.
have, your list of the hours and things.
Right,
Okay, I didn't look through my package.
but that's not for the donation, but I'll send you an email with the information for the donations as well.
Yeah,
in
and,
the
you know,
boxes.
we can announce that, too.
Yeah.
Great. Absolutely.
That would be excellent, we would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other public comment?
I thought John was going to talk to something.
Mr. Londa, do you have some issues for the board? Thank you.
Good evening, John Londa, Director of Facilities for Lunenburg Public Schools. I was going to give you a quick update on where we are with contract negotiations for two projects. The Select Energy project for solar rooftop for the DPW garage and for the middle school, high school. And then secondly, on the net metering agreement for the town. So for the Select, we've been working with interim town manager, town council, with Select Energy and their attorneys. We're at the point where we think we're either going to have this approved or we'll probably walk from it. But these are what my job here tonight is to talk to you about what we see as the risks in the contract. I think you should be mostly familiar with what we think the upside is, but there are 5 risks I'm going to talk to you about associated with this contract, so you're aware of them. So bad things can happen with any contract, but in this one, we're inviting essentially a third party to put over $1 million worth of real estate or property on the roof of one of our buildings. That large investment has risks associated with it. The risks, the top 5 I'm going to talk about was the first one would be, should the town default on the contract? With $1 million worth of property sitting on the roof of the high school, there are several ways we could, default on the contract. First one would be if we somehow misrepresented ourselves to the vendor, and we're not legally able to enter into this contract, and therefore void the contract. Secondly would be as if we stopped paying for the production that the solar array, was going to generate. That does not include, disputed payments, but if we just stop paying, that would be a default of the contract. Any obligation failures, which would be like us not allowing the contractor to go to the roof and work on the unit if it had a problem, failing to ensure that, any kind of repairs to the electrical system were taken care of that we needed to do to be able to ensure that the solar array could do its job. Insolvency on our part, our inability to pay if we go bankrupt or go into receivership of some kind, that would also trigger, a default by the town. So those are the kinds of things that, would represent the biggest risk for this contract if somehow we fail to deliver our part of the contract. The default damages, however, are substantial. They could range anywhere from $1.2 million if we defaulted in the second year of the contract, down to roughly $129,000 if we defaulted in the last year of the contract. And so this is a 20-year contract, so the first 7 years where the contractor has probably the most risk, because he's not only collecting for the production, but he's also collecting SRECs, and that's a benefit to him. So if some reason this thing came offline and we did not allow it to go back online, we would be required to pay that default payment. The contractor would have an option to do other things. Conceivably they could sell the array to us. There's a price in the contract for us to buy it. He could also continue to operate it and sell the power to somebody else. So there are a number of things that could happen, but obviously, that's a risk if we somehow not deliver our part of this bargain on this contract. Secondly, there's a language in the contract that allows for a renegotiation of rates should there be a change in law that would affect either party. They would provide notice, and then we would try to negotiate our way to an agreement. This is something that I think probably has a higher probability than many of these other ones, but this one is tied to law such as what affects the solar renewable energy credits. Currently, this contract was negotiated on 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour, with it getting constructed this calendar year. That's part of why, if this is not moved forward, that rate will not be the rate. So there is some risk there, and in the negotiation process, discussion was made of potentially maybe a 2-cent increase in the rate to 10.3 cents. That 2-cent difference, it represents about $300,000 worth of savings over the course of 20 years, so it's not insubstantial. And so we are at the point where if this is going to get built this calendar year, we kind of need to tell them to go do it to get it started, because they have to order materials, they have to install it, and it has to be substantially complete with the construction by January 8th. If the interconnection comes later, that's fine, but the construction of it has to be complete by January 8th. Third risk. We had language in the contract at one point that said that if the project was not net metered, that we would walk away from the contract. We would declare it null and void. That I don't think is there is a little bit of risk there. I don't think it's substantial. The middle school, high school will use a lot of electricity. And so if it's not net metered, I think there will be an impact, but very small. I'm calculating it somewhere around 1.5% of the total savings that the project might achieve. The one that is more substantial would be the Department of Public Works garage, where we think that's closer to like 27% of the savings if we didn't get it net metered. And the reason why one is significant and the other one is not, the Department of Public Works garage, we're essentially trying to produce all of the electricity that facility uses in a year, which means that we'll probably have 6 to 7 months of production where we're going to exceed what they would use, and essentially use it up though in those other months. And that extra production would be net. If it's not net metered, means we might get 3 cents on a kilowatt hour from Unitil. So I said it cuts into the savings substantially. So that is a risk. There is room in the net metering cap for both these projects. Both of them have been registered in Mass ACA. The Department of Public Works garage is further along than the school is, but they are pursuing net metering on it. So while it is a risk, I said I don't think it's a substantial risk. The fourth risk has to do with the fact that when we had this out for bid, we required a performance bond and a payment bond. That's all associated with the construction of the project. However, we did not require a decommissioning bond. So we could find ourselves dealing with the array at some point in time if the contractor went bankrupt and was out of business and the array was still on the middle school, high school, we might have to deal with taking it off at some point. That's a risk. There are some things that mitigate that risk. This is a 20-year contract. The lifespan on the panels is about 25 years, and they will be producing power at the end of this contract. So there would be some return to the town if it stayed on and the town was able to use those. The base part of the contract does require, though, that the contractor take the array off at the end, or we negotiate what we want to do at that point. We could then purchase it at fair market value, continue to operate it. But in this contract, we do not currently have a decommissioning bond required. Lastly, so the fifth risk that I wanted to talk to you about had to do with the tax implications for Select. So in the contract, we are saying that Select would be liable for personal property tax on the array. However, Select's view on this is that they haven't seen anybody really require them to pay personal property tax on their arrays. I don't believe that we have been taxing Broadway Electric or next after them for the Turkey Hill array since 2010. If we Select a tax bill, they very well might dispute it. So that's a risk. And that goes into areas that I'm not particularly comfortable talking about, just because I don't have the expertise. But why the assessors maybe don't feel comfortable with that, I don't know. But our attorney did say that from his perspective, we are legally able to charge them personal property tax if we decide to do so.
I could speak to that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Sure.
Currently, the assessors are in the process of putting out an RFP for assessing services, and one of the issues is personal property tax, that they have not had the ability with the feet on the ground to go and inventory all of the personal tax. That's part of the new RFP. So that's something that the town has already been looking at, and I concur with town council that it is a taxable entity, but I also agree with Mr. Londa. We probably haven't been taxing in the past, but that doesn't mean that we can't. If we get the ability with the new RFP, having the feet on the ground, people actually touching the personal property, inventorying it, we could get a correct accounting and collect those taxes. Whether or not they ask for an abatement, we'll deal with that at that point in time, but it is taxable in my legal opinion, and as well as town councils.
So
And the register, and the Department of Revenue as well, so it's kind of a no-brainer.
So the town hasn't been taxing because we didn't have the capacity with the assessors?
Yes and no. They send out a schedule, and they ask Company A, please give us a list of your personal property, and they say no changes from last year. Well, you can't have a computer that's 27 years old, or you can't, if you have big trucks or something, every so often you're going to replace them, or, your personal property in a company is taxable. It's the things in the company, the desks, the computers, the trucks, the cars, and we're getting the schedules back saying no changes, and we don't have like people physically going to Mr. and Mrs. Smith's office and touching the desks and inventorying them and looking at how many fax machines and how many copiers, and that's what we need to do. And that's what's part of the new RFP, is actually hiring agents, if you will, to go and inspect, just like the assessors inspect your house after you put a building permit in place. They go and look to see when you have an occupancy permit, is it, completed. Same idea with a company. They physically inspect that you have a copy machine and a desk and et cetera.
And with solar equipment, the value of it depreciates fairly quickly. A lot of it's tied up in the first 7 years when it's generating SRECs, and after that, its production per year is closer to 75,000. So
Well, that's why we've
If you're gonna
offered
do it.
pilots in a couple of the places, I think.
So I have a point of order. Does this public comment, and this is not on the agenda? I'm assuming this is just information for us?
It's informational.
Okay.
The reason it's here is because you've already voted at town meeting to sign the PPA, and
No, we voted to give us the authority to sign.
Thank you.
We didn't vote to authorize us to sign it. That's a huge difference.
Okay, I appreciate the correction, yes. And so it's before you for execution if you so choose to execute it. And I thought it important to bring you up to speed as to where we stand with all the issues. So the issues are, it's a moving target. I got 5 emails today from town council, so it's been, a fluid situation. Every day is a new thing.
So this will be on our agenda for our first meeting on November 1st?
If need be, sure, certainly.
Well, if this is not an agenda item, and these are serious risks that I think we need to take one at a time, and I don't want to spend public comment doing that, I'm certainly not willing to sign off on it today.
I don't think these are changing. You either accept them or I think we're done.
Right, but that might be true from Select. I mean, Select is a company, they certainly have the ability to say that and draw a line in the sand, and that's good, so good for them. But, that doesn't mean I don't want to discuss them with us, because each one of these 5 has precedent. I mean, it's not like this is a new thing we're getting in. We have buildings that have solar. I'd love to know on every of these 5 points. I just don't think the public comment is the time to discuss it, because it's going to be in-depth.
Is it a time-sensitive matter, Mr. Wanda, if we wait until our first meeting in November 1st?
I don't know how they're going to, I think they've got a real challenge to do this if we signed it like
Right.
today.
Right, that's what I would say, too. If we're on October, what is it today, the 20th?
Today's the
18th?
18th, I believe.
And they have to finish it by the end of December substantially, and we haven't even signed the contract, I think it's probably not happening.
They don't have an internet interconnect with the Unitil?
Right.
This is our last meeting in
Yeah,
October?
the interconnection is in progress.
Right.
So, I mean, I would say that Select has been good about pushing the project as long as they could. However, they have not ordered any equipment.
And we don't know what the
without a
weather's
signed
going to be.
contract.
And so, I mean, this is just a wing and a prayer. If we did it tonight, which I'm not, personally, as one member, I'm not willing to sign off on tonight, not with these kind of questions, especially the net metering question.
I would be open if we need to have a special meeting on this, but I haven't looked at the contract or the language or anything either, so.
Yeah, I would suggest, I would not be adverse to having a special meeting, but as Mr. Alonso said, I do think it's something we need to look at, and I would like to re-review the contract in light of these issues that you've talked about. So I do think we either need to put it on our November 1st agenda or schedule a special meeting.
Okay, why don't we leave that to John and the town manager to tell us if it's reasonable. We obviously are in agreement that we're not going to do anything tonight. is it reasonable to meet at our next meeting? If it's not, and we still have a potential to make the end of the year, if we have a special meeting, we'll see if we can get available to do that.
What would be the date of the special meeting for next Tuesday? Is that what we're talking?
Well, that's most likely.
Okay.
Right, the 25th.
It's fine with me.
Okay.
Is that okay, if we have to have one? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We probably
So
would be
that's our choice.
televised,
Okay.
right?
Do the
No
Civil
21st,
Commission's
25th to the
televised.
1st.
So moved, so noted, rather. Just for the board's information, as I said, it's a fluid situation. I got the contract this afternoon. Literally, like right before I went into the capital planning meeting is when it came across. The i's got dotted and the t's got crossed, and so it's been fluid right up until the last minute.
Sure.
So you should get a copy of that.
Yes, I can
Right.
get a copy of
Right.
that to everyone. I'll email it over.
So that's the first contract. Do you want me to continue with the second contract?
Sure.
Second
unless it's-
contract is a net metering agreement. This was initially believed to be with Borrego Solar, and it turns out Borrego is acting as a broker for a company called Clean Footprint, Inc. Same location, same project, same rates, everything the same, but the contract is not going to be with Borrego, it's going to would be with Clean Footprint. This is, once again, it's a net metering agreement. The production will be on a rooftop in Fitchburg. We would take the net metering credits, apply them against at least two of our accounts in town, and then pay Clean Footprint 13.75 cents per net metering contract, our net meter contract credit. So that is what the second contract is about. That one entails risks as well. If we default, we don't pay the bill.
Let me ask, I'm going to stop there if I may.
Sure.
So we have one with the Chase Road, that's a net metering,
Yes.
right?
And on that one, we're
So
paying...
what are the differences in the contract?
So the differences, so net, that's Mass PV, the one on Chase Road, we're paying roughly 17 cents for those net metering credits. We have a project with NextAmp that has not yet gone online, and we're going to be paying roughly 15 cents for each net metering credit. With Clean Footprint, we're proposing 13.75 cents for net metering credit. So, from that perspective, looks like a very good deal. The town council was concerned about the price. Knowing what we've already agreed to, I think this is a good price. Once again, it has risks like any other contract if we default and don't provide our
But those exist in the other ones.
Yes.
So what I'm asking is, what are the differences? Are there any differences in the risks between the NextAmp project that we're doing net metering, for instance, the one that's not online yet, the Chase Road?
There's a lot less risks because the solar array is not sitting on our building, and it's not even in the town of Lunenburg. So it's all about us, once again, meeting our requirements under the contract.
That's right.
And if we
So-
do those things, it'd be very low risk, in my opinion.
Okay. But there's no difference in the risk that we have with those as far as the wording. I mean, the impact of the risk may be different, but the wording is, clearly, we have to pay our bills. If we don't pay our bills, they have recourse.
Yes.
That's just like...
It's a substantial recourse, though.
On all of them.
Right,
Right, but...
Yeah, and that's,
right. So that's, we've already agreed to it in other
Yes.
places.
But I guess the question that I would ask, if we can have a quick review of it, of the language, is it the same language?
it's not. It is different because, particularly with respect to default, if we default on the contract, they will try to market that to somebody else, bring somebody else into a contract. Depending upon what they bring them to a contract, we're going to pay the difference between what we agreed to and what they now put in place. So if we agree to 13.75 cents and they come up with somebody that'll pay 13, we're going to pay, the 0.75 on every kilowatt hour it generates for 20 years. So, I mean, that's the
Right,
reason why.
but we have.
Yeah, so
we
that's,
have trash contracts for 10 years. If we don't pay them, I'm sure there's recourse for that too.
Yes.
I mean,
Exactly.
these are just, yeah, you gotta be a good citizen as this town and pay your bills.
yeah. We just wanted, it's from, town council wanted to make sure that we told you these risks.
I appreciate that you're telling us, but I don't know that there's anything different in this particular contract than existed in the other ones.
One of my concerns is the decommissioning, the fact that that's not included, that.
I guess
This doesn't apply to this one.
So
No, this
I would
is
call a
the-
point of order again. I think
Sure.
we're deliberating.
I agree. And let me ask you something, is the time sensitivity on the second issue any different than the first? I mean, can we deal with both of them either on our next meeting?
I think they're not getting pressed as hard on this other one.
The second
Being
one.
built on somebody else's
Why don't we deal
property.
with both of them as a special
Right,
item?
I agree.
Okay, and we'll make sure we get some good staff work to lay out the,
Let's make sure we have the other contracts that we've
Yeah.
already approved available at that meeting, or maybe even beforehand, so we can review them.
Yeah, beforehand
Right.
would be helpful.
thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay. We have a 7:05 appointment with Trish Domigan to give us an update that we requested on Summer Street project. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
You're here to tell us they're doing construction tomorrow?
Well, they will be doing construction, but it's not going to be tomorrow. Just to give you a little bit of status update, the ad date is next year. It's right now, it's May 6, 2017, so it's terrific. We're going full course. The 75% plans, which means that the design's about 90% done, was submitted back to Mass DOT in May of this year. So, they've done their review. We're advancing to 100% design now. So we're actually moving the project along to final design, which is very exciting. It's going to be terrific to go under construction. As I had mentioned, the advertisement date is May 6th. The construction cost is $9.9 million right now. Mass DOT asks us to update the construction costs almost monthly at this point because, construction costs vary, especially with roadway contracts. So we update the cost estimate pretty much on a monthly basis.
Sorry, is 9.9 just Lunenburg's, or is that Fitchburg, Lunenburg, and
That's the
Leominster?
entire
That's the
project.
total project.
Yep, the entire corridor. All of the environmental permitting is complete, which is terrific also, because now we can start going to talk to the property owners about easements, both temporary and permanent easements for the project. So we are in the process of scheduling a neighborhood meeting to talk to the residents and the property owners along the Lunenburg section of Summer Street, and that will happen at the beginning of November. I'm working with Mr. Rodequin on scheduling a location for that meeting. It's probably going to be in the evening, early evening. If people can't make it, I'm going to go out on a Saturday and knock on people's doors just so that they understand what the implications are to their properties. And the temporary easements that mostly the project in Lunenburg on Summer Street, the temporary easements is just to do some minor grading on property or maybe driveway aprons, reconstruct driveway aprons that go into the new roadway because we're narrowing the roadway a lot. So it's really some minor upgrades. There's a few properties, especially the commercial properties, that I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the implications, the relocation of driveways, things like that. So that's going to be a one-on-one meeting with them. Right now, there's 26 temporary easements and 6 permanent easements that are required for the project. Most of the permanent easements are required on the MBTA property. That's the next step also. As part of the land acquisitions, the temporary and permanent easements, we do have to contact the MBTA and talk to them about the need for license agreements for the temporary easements, for the temporary work, and any permanent easements that are required on their property. So that's going to be, I'm going to schedule a meeting with them for next week. The appraisals will start in January. I think that they're actually going to start before that. So at the latest, it'll be January. I'm going to hope to start them in December. I've already talked to the appraiser for the project. He will be going under contract with VHB. We're going to put him under contract so that he can actually work with each of the properties to determine what the market value is for the temporary and permanent easements on their properties. The Board of Selectmen, so the schedule, the sequence of events is we'll meet with the property owners, we'll get sign off on the temporary and permanent easements. The appraisals will happen in January. The Board of Selectmen will come to you in April of next year and present the takings. You'll vote to take the easements, and then we'll go through preparing a right-of-way certificate for the project, and that'll get submitted to Mass DOT for approval, for final advertisement of the project.
Question that I have, April of next year, you're going to come to the Board of Selectmen for the easements, and you said there are 6 permanent easements. Will there be any action required by town meeting? And this is,
To accept those easements?
yes.
You may have to go to town meeting to accept those.
So one of the concerns that I would have is our town meeting is early in May.
Okay.
So if there's any way that we could move that forward.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. This is a
because
very generous schedule. Like I said, the appraisers, Mass DOT reviews our schedule. When we submit the construction cost estimate, we also update the schedule, and they've given a very generous time period to secure these easements, starting from October through March. So we can accelerate all of that and try to get things moving in November and December, so that everything's all ready for you for town meeting to accept the easements and then move to the...
I think that's going to be really important.
Sure,
Our town meeting is the
absolutely.
second Saturday in May? Is that-
Okay.
So it's going to be,
The warrant is set much earlier, so
Right.
if you can have, quote, dummy articles or whatever
Yep.
ones that would be... then
When do
we
you
could-
start your warrant process?
typically in March. Is
Okay.
that right? When is the warrant usually open? Is it March?
End of February.
February to March, and it's mailed in April, right?
It has to be mailed
14 days
Early.
prior.
2 weeks before,
Yeah.
so it's got to
So-
be received by the middle of April, so we send
Right.
it like...
So we need the final wording by the middle of April. So, you know, or beginning of April, right, right.
I would say even the end of March, because it has to go to town council and then be
Right.
printed.
Right.
So you're probably looking at, the 20th, 21st of March, so you can have a realistic review by town council and still get it to the printer in time.
So we're
So
going
we'll plan on the
need to
beginning of March. I
accelerate
don't want
that.
to even bump up against
Yeah,
that, so
yeah.
I'll make sure that it gets done at the end of February, beginning of March. And that's where we're at. Do you have any other questions?
Just one question, how many temporary easements?
Right now, there are 26 temporary easements.
26, and 6 permanent.
And 6 permanent easements. A lot of the permanent easements are on the MBTA property. And again, Mass DOT requires now what's called slope easements. So anytime that we put like a rock riprap on a slope, that they want to secure an easement, a permanent easement for slope, so that the town has the right to maintain it in the future.
Right.
But along that property, along the MBTA property, this is a question for the MBTA, all of the rock was placed, I think, by the MBTA to stabilize their land. So why would the town be responsible for that? So I think that would be something that we'd have to negotiate with the MBTA and make sure that if they're willing to take on the ownership of it because they have it now, then it wouldn't be a permanent easement. We're just replacing what's out there right now, sprucing it up a little bit.
Okay.
As our professional who, I'm sure yourself and your company do many of these type projects across the state, how do you feel the project is in right now?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I can hardly wait to see it constructed. It's really a terrific job. I think it's going to be such an improvement to what's out there right now. No offense, I love Lunenburg and I love Summer Street, but the width of the roadway right now just invites people to go really fast, especially going towards Fitchburg. And I think what this will do is introduce more of a scale that's better suited for the residential properties along Summer Street, throughout the project, but especially in Lunenburg.
I wasn't arguing about the project completion, I'm talking about our preparedness for it was my...
I think there's a lot of float in the schedule.
Yeah, I think the
I'm sorry,
project is awesome,
I
too.
think it's awesome.
So do
yeah. No, there's a lot of float in the schedule. DOT at the beginning of the year, was it the beginning of the year? I think it was before April. They were extremely concerned that this would be an at-risk project.
Right.
I think they were expecting more process associated with the environmental component of it, and also of the easements, and it's really, it's going through things quite nicely. There's no roadblocks, pardon the pun, right now, so I think...
And what is the projected construction, when the construction starts to the completion of the project, how long is...
It'll be at least 2 to 3 years. Yeah, the way that the MPO is actually financing it is what's called AC, Advanced Construction. So they're actually going to be financing this project over the series of years of the construction schedule, just so that they can have fluid cash flow for other projects within the region.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms.
A
Brick.
couple other questions. The $9.9 million number, is that different than the original number that was voted on and approved by the MPO?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
All right, the question, that's an important
I don't think it
issue.
is. I think that is the number.
Okay, because my understanding is that tomorrow MPO's meeting, there are going to be proposed adjustments to the tip, and we haven't received those adjustments yet.
Oh.
So I'm concerned, and I did send an email to Brad Harris, and he doesn't believe that it's going to put this project at risk. However, that there may need to be adjustments, and so this is why I wanted to have an update prior to the meeting tomorrow. So I just want to make sure that number is still within what was funded.
Yeah, the number, the 9.9 million, was based on the 75% submission that we had submitted to Mass DOT, including District 3.
Okay.
And they do work with the MPO to
Right,
make sure
right.
that the construction cost that has been submitted with the latest submission matches the MPO, the tip amount.
Right,
So
right.
it should be consistent.
Okay.
I just don't know back in, was it April, if it's the same, or if DOT has been working with the MPO. I haven't looked that up.
Then the other question I had is, at one point, we talked that we may need some additional funding.
Right.
So is that still on the table, that we might be talking about at
For
special town
design,
meeting?
this is specifically for design. And this isn't necessarily a question to you, but I think more for the town manager, is there was additional funding needed for the design because of stormwater. My understanding is stormwater changes that Mass DOT required, and that affected the design costs. So additional funding is going to be needed, and where that funding is going to come from. And I think that's an internal discussion we need to have.
Right, to your point, as I understand, there was a change order from DOT. I think the number was 196, I believe it was, and it was assessed to all 3 communities. And our share of that change order, I believe it was at the 75% submission, was 120. And
102.
Pardon me?
102.
102, okay, I transposed 2 numbers, thank you. That's better, I like that better. So that being the case, yes, we need to come up with that amount of money, and that is one of the reasons we're looking at special town meeting, so that we could, with the levy limit ability, we could access that money and fund it in this fiscal year.
A question to you for the design, is that the total design cost that we can anticipate for this project?
Through the final design plan package.
Okay.
So everything that you have right now is to get the project so that it can be advertised. Construction phase services is not included, and what that means is that when the contractor submits shop drawings, any plan interpretations, clarifications, things like that, that is not included. That's a very small cost.
Is that incorporated in the 9.9 million?
No, that's not a DOT, that's something that the towns will have to bear. And it's a very small cost, and it'll be distributed between the 3 communities. So that's something that will happen. The contractor will probably mobilize in May, July, sometime in September or so. September, October of next year is when the construction will start.
Fiscal 18.
So we're going to need to have an idea of those numbers
Yeah.
prior to our town meeting in May, because we're going to need to make
Sure.
sure we budget appropriately
It's
for that.
it's like $20,000 distributed between the 3
I know that
communities.
seems like small, but for us, it's
It's a lot,
not
yeah, I know,
necessarily
but
small, so.
compared to the 9.9 million, it's a
Right,
very
right,
small
but we need to make sure we budget appropriately for that. One other question.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
talked about the easements in Lunenburg.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a lot of issues with the easements in Lunenburg, and looking at the plans. are we at the same state with Leominster and Fitchburg?
Fitchburg has, I spoke with Fitchburg today. They either have already retained the appraiser, or they're in the process of signing the contract with the appraiser. So they're actually ahead of you.
Okay.
They've already mailed out all of the notification to the property owners, so they're a step ahead. Leominster is on the same pace as you. So everyone is focused on getting this to make sure that we can get a right-of-way certificate for advertisement of this
Great.
project. Yeah. Yep.
Any other questions?
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
Really
thank you very much.
appreciate
No
the update.
problem. Have a nice evening.
You too.
You too.
Hope everything else that we have on our agenda is awesome as well.
Oh, this is just it really is a great job. It's coming together. It's been a long time coming, and it's going to be a little interesting through construction, but afterwards it'll be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our first current business item is the election ballot question, discussion or forum. Just let me get a feel. Is there anybody here that wants to speak to question 1? Question 2? Question 3? And question 4? So question 2 is basically the one we want to speak to. And we have one person in the public, and why don't I let you have the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Mike Mackin. I live at 26 Cortlandt Circle in Lunenburg. I'm also chairman of the Lunenburg School Committee, chairman of the Lunenburg School Building Committee. I've come to talk to you tonight about question 2, and specifically about my concerns that lead me to advocate voting no on question 2. A little bit of background. Charter schools have existed in the state since the 1993 ed reforms, when we started out with 24 charter schools. Under those laws, when the legislature was looking to increase those numbers, it was done through a budget and debate process where they debated how, where, and when these schools could go. It was always by act of the state legislature. And in fact, the last time they raised the cap was in 2010. Legislatures failed to take up further, to act on further lifting of the caps. So I want to be understood that I'm speaking for myself, not the school committee. The school committee has not taken a position yet on this issue. We're going to be discussing it again tomorrow night, and we're taking it up at that point. So I just want to make it clear before we go in any further on this that I speak for myself, although as the chairman of the school building committee, I believe it's important that I do this. School committee, it's important that I do this. In fact, it's as part of the advisory from the Ethics Commission on Public Employee Political Activity, we were advised by our counsel, who we sought on this, Tim Norris, that the advisory does permit an elected board to take a position on a ballot question. Likewise, the advisory indicates a policy-making official may also be expected to have a position on a ballot question, especially where that question impacts their official duties. The impact question 2 on the schools is significant, and therefore I think it impacts our official duties, our mutual official duties. There are differences of opinion. It's a difficult discussion, and with divergent opinions, and that's okay. We should be able to have these discussions as part of citizens of a democracy and come to a conclusion together. So what does 2 do and what does it not do? Okay, 2 will allow for 12 new charter schools per year with no end in sight. There's no cap on the lifting of the cap. It's 12 a year forever ad infinitum. It expands that up to 1% of the current school population, statewide school population. Currently, there are 404 school districts that serve 955,000 students. So that means that expanding charter enrollment would be by 9,550 in the first year, and will go up exponentially in later years. So it will be nearly 100,000. It would allow for an additional 100,000 slots in charter schools over 10 years. It would also mean 120 new charters in that time. The proponents of question 2 say that this is to deal with problems of the waiting list, which by their numbers say that it's over 30,000 people, which means that at the rate of expansion they're talking about, they would be done in 3 years. So I'm curious as to why we need a cap that goes on year after year, a cap lift that goes on year after year after year after year after year. In fact, there's some question about even that 30,000 number. The comptroller, Bump, did an audit of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's oversight of the waiting lists and found the data to be inadequate. So we're not quite certain that even that 30,000 that the proponents say are on waiting lists throughout the state is an accurate number. Some of the characteristics. Well, charter's performance varies from school to school, just like our schools do. Some are excellent. We have 2 wonderful charters within our area, Sizer and Parker, who do a wonderful job. That said, according to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, 10 of the 80 charters are operating under conditions or on probation. So their charter has some conditions placed on it because of their performance, or they're on probation to lose their charter. 13 charters have been closed over the past 20 years. Again, many are good, but question 2, to my mind, is a blank check. There's nothing in 2 that addresses quality. There's nothing in 2 that addresses financing. There's nothing in 2 that addresses the problems with financing of our currently of our public schools. Characteristics of students served by charter schools. So the Massachusetts Association of School Committees did a study in 2014 called "Who is Being Served?" And they concluded that charters educate different students with disabilities than districts do. In districts, we serve all 13 categories of disabilities, not so charter schools. Obviously, charter schools do not serve individuals with complicated disabilities. Charters educate fewer English language learners. Non-urban charters, like ourselves, enroll less than 1/4 of the English language learners of sending districts. They educate fewer students living in poverty. Non-urban charters enrollment is 25% to 30% lower for students living in poverty than district-based schools. So this is an indictment, but it's a challenge, because all these things mean that district-based schools are providing education for everyone. Charter schools may not be. And this has a budget impact. And that budget impact is that currently our district itself is sending $443,000 in tuition to charter schools. It comes off the cherry sheet, doesn't come through the schools at all. And that's $43,000 that is going to what is a private institution with no community oversight.
Could you repeat that amount?
Yeah, then.
$440,000. $443,000.
And that's not choice, just charter?
That's just charter.
From this district?
Annually?
Correct.
From this district?
Correct.
How many students is that?
That is 58 students.
So 58 students from Lunenburg go to charter schools?
Correct. There's an estimate that it's 450 million statewide. So that has an impact on us. Now, people say, well, that if you're not serving those people, then doesn't that lower your costs? Well, there are certain costs that are fixed that you can't deal with. I mean, 58 students that go someplace else are spread throughout the district. Because you may have...
What's the cost per student?
There's a tuition that's similar to our per pupil cost.
So what would that be?
It's around $14,000 a year.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
You're talking about fixed costs.
Oh, the fixed costs, thank you. You know, you're still, your building costs haven't gone away because of those 58 students going someplace else. Because you have 58 students spread throughout the district, it doesn't mean that you can have 2 less teachers because there are 58 students gone. They're spread throughout the district, so it doesn't reduce your personnel costs. So it has an impact. Obviously, our special ed costs are going to be much, much higher than a charter school because we're serving those folks. It has an impact on our operation. And, you know, people have looked at it and, you know, for instance, the Boston Globe came out with a piece that talked of a study that said, well, there was no really change. But when they examined what happened in the Boston schools is that the Boston schools made up the loss of their tuition by taking it from other city departments. So yes, the schools remained okay, but the impact was on other city departments. So, who's against the support of 2? What groups have come out against 2? It's worth listening to. There are currently more than 180 school districts that have passed resolutions opposing 2, including our neighbors, Air Shirley, Fitchburg, Gardner, Leominster, North Middlesex, Acton-Boxborough. Proponents say that it will address underperforming urban schools, yet the following school committees oppose question 2: Boston, Lowell, Cambridge, Fall River, Greater Lawrence Tech, Lowell, New Bedford. And it's worth noting that the New England Conference of the NAACP has come out in opposition to question 2, feeling that its impact is creating a 2-track system of education. Other organizations you might be interested in are, I believe you belong to it, the Massachusetts Municipal Association has come out in opposition of question 2. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, Massachusetts PTA, the Retired Educators Association of Massachusetts. What groups are in support of 2? Well, there's several charter support groups. Right now, one of the largest is Great Schools Now, but of all the groups, they have raised they've raised $12 million, which is 2 times the amount that's being spent by the opponents of 2. And according to WBUR, a report I read from BUR, 80% of it came from out of state, half of it came from New York. In fact, $6 million came from a single group, the New York group, Families for Excellent Schools, which is a dark money group. It doesn't have to disclose its donors. But through some investigation, they have found out that Alice and Jim Walton have given that group $1.8 million. So I just want to conclude by saying that our concern isn't with charters as a whole. It's the impact on our operations. And the fact that I believe that it's an action that should be taken by the legislature. This is something that should be publicly debated and not a large policy that will really significantly impact our entire school system for years to come without a real public debate about it. And I think that debate belongs with the legislature, not with a ballot question. I think that the legislature, I as an advocate would be advocating that the legislature take this up again and address some of the concerns that school districts have about their relationship to charters. and how to even the playing field and ensure appropriate funding for public schools. So the impact of charter schools would not be so great. So, again, I thank you for your time. I hope that you would take this up and discuss it. We're certainly going to be doing it at the school committee. I think it's an important thing that impacts not only the schools but the town as a whole, and I would hope that you would take the time to do it, because I believe that people in the community need to have this discussion heard, and they need to hear from opposing points of view on this issue in a way that we can make really good choices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on ballot question 2? Mr. Rogers.
My name is Dave Rogers. I live at 82 Highland Street here in Lunenburg. And before I come forth and talk about the issue that I want to clarify the math, if I could. So if somebody's got a calculator, I believe my friend Mike Mackin said that there were 54 students? 58. And there was a cost to educate 58 kids from Lunenburg of approximately $14,000 each.
Yeah, that's about $812,000.
And I thought that I heard my friend say that the impact from the charter schools was somewhere in the vicinity of $400,000. Is that right?
443.
All right. I mean, the math is there, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. What I'm really here to talk to you about is someone who is near and dear to me, and that's Jack Thomas Rogers Mason. When I was a member of the board, I used to say goodnight to Jack every time at the end of the meeting. Jack lives in Fitchburg with his mother and father, and started out his education at a parochial school, and then went to a city school in Fitchburg. And all of the time we felt, his mother and father and Karen and I felt, that Jack could do better. And he wasn't necessarily getting the kind of help that he needed. So his mother and father decided to put his name in the lottery for the Sizer School. And he was accepted, or he won in the lottery, okay? Report cards just came out 2 weeks ago, I believe. And Jack received 5 Bs and 1 A. And thank God he takes after his mother and father and his grandmother. The point is this. There are all kinds of issues that will be talked about. But at the end of the day, the issue that's most important to me is the direct result of a charter school education to my grandson. And it's clear that he is receiving a very good education, and the results show with the 5 Bs and the 1 A. I also want to disclose to you that I am on the foundation board of the charter school, okay, the Sizer School. I was asked to join by a friend and was happy to do my part. I will tell you that in terms of fiscal responsibility and fiscal management, they are very, very well done, well run. They're very tight. They check every nickel, and recently, and I'm not going to use the right nomenclature here, but recently there was a review of the schools, and the Sizer School received a 1. And that's the best that you can get. And someone who is more in tune educationally, I'm sure, can comment on the specificity of what that involves. But it's number 1, okay? And I think we've got a good school system here in Lunenburg. I think we do a good job. But we were a 2, I believe. So the point is this. And I'm sure there'll be 1 in time, because they're great people and they work really hard. Okay, and I'm not going to put the Sizer School against anybody, but I just want to point out to you that here is a guy standing before you tonight that has direct knowledge of what has happened at the Sizer School for Jack Thomas Rogers Mason. Now, the concern that I have going forward is, how the hell are we going to elect Jack Thomas Rogers Mason to Congress? But we'll do that later on. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and I agree with my friend Mike Mackin. I think people need to talk about this and debate this, but I personally am in favor of funding the charter schools, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak to question 2?
I would, and I'll wait, I don't want,
No?
if anybody from the public wants.
We should check that.
So first, I want to thank Mr. Mackin and Mr. Rogers both for coming forward. You know, as I asked the chair, and I thank the chair for putting this on the agenda item. You know, you get a booklet, everybody got this booklet in the mail, and I don't know how many people read it, and there's limited amount of information beside the real fact that it has all the actual verbiage of the acts being passed. That's the good part. No, very little evaluation of it, and very little information beside 1 or 2 paragraphs. So I think having an open conversation is important for a town, especially on those items that I think impact the town. So in this case, I think question 2 does impact the town, and I think that, as Mr. Mackin stated from the Ethics Committee and from the Department, the Secretary of State of the state, that elected officials, you know, almost have a responsibility to discuss it. My feeling about charter schools, about question 2, is I am opposed for several reasons. The first one being that you are, by definition, taking a single funding stream. The legislature and the state government has not created any other funding stream for a charter school. So you're taking a single funding stream and splitting it, and you're splitting into 2 areas that are competing against each other. So the first thing is that the idea that in the in favor opinion in this booklet, the first thing they state is that parents should have the right to choose the best public schools for their children. And in part, that already exists. You can apply to other schools under school choice programs and ask to go to other schools. And that is a possibility already. And those public schools are funded the same way our public school is, and there's an exchange of dollars that happens with that. What they've created now is a separate entity of schools that splits the funding, which is number 1, and it does divert funding away from the public schools to the charters. Number 2 is those charters are not overseen by publicly elected bodies. So they are appointed boards of directors that have no direct accountability to the taxpayers who pay them, to pay the schools. And that is, I think, a serious problem, number 2. Number 3 is that the idea that there is a lottery to choose leaves it. I appreciate that people want the best education for their children, as they should. I think we as community, as somebody who has no children, but who is very involved in the community, I want all the residents of the community, no matter what grade level, to have the best education that they can. And to create a split school district that you have to, by chance, if it's so great, and you have to, we're going to leave it to a random choice that your child may get into a school, while you're taking money away from the school district that, if you're not lucky enough to get the lottery, you have to go back to, that has out those funds. So it really creates a competitive, a poorly competitive system that leaves the current school district, or the truly public school district, at a loss for those funds. The other thing is, the public school districts, meaning like Lunenburg School District, has no choice about people wanting to go. You know, anybody who moves into this district, regardless of their, whether they are special needs children, whether they are English as a second language child, or any other student who moves in, by law, has to be able to go there. So you get to be very selective for the charter schools, which puts, again, school districts, our own school districts, at a very deep disadvantage. For all of those reasons, I believe that we should oppose this. I should actually state one more, which is the lack of cap, so 12 per year forever, ad infinitum, I think, again, is has no ceiling. When does that happen? At some point, you could have half the school district going to one, half to go to another. We just built a new school, and we have bills that go with that. And if you drain, a quarter, a third, a half of the student population to go somewhere else, those are fixed costs. Transportation is a fixed cost. So they're not apples to apples. It's not really a fair choice. It's not public oversight. If anything, they're quasi-public schools because they use public money. They can even hire for-profit management companies. They're not restricted from using for-profit management companies, even though the charter school themselves is a nonprofit. So that's problematic too. There are too many problems with this. It would have too severe an impact on not only this district, but I think school districts across the state. So I would urge people to, and I would advocate against question 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I want to call it the Accountable Care Act, that's healthcare, but everything's talking about competition with the schools. And I watched it with some concern, but I have seen improvements. The theory would be that the public schools would spend more money to compete with the charter schools to try to retain their students. I know at one point when a charter was going in Fitchburg, Lunenburg School Committee did not oppose it at that point, and our superintendent stated that it's our duty to make sure that we have a school that people will want to come to, and that we need to continue to fund that appropriately, and I think we've been trying to do that, especially with the school building that we've just completed. I am concerned with, across the country, the privatization of the public school system. I think the loss of that, I'm appreciative of the good charters that we have in the area and the success rates that we've seen with some of those students. But I am concerned with the economics with, as Mr. Mackin stated, that if you take the students out of the entire school system, it doesn't mean you're going to be eliminating a class because you've lost that many students, that the cost will still be there, and that I don't think that the final thing that gets it for me is that there's no cap on these additional charters. We have existing charters at this point, and I think additional work needs to be done to expand it that way. So that's why I'm opposed to question 2.
Anybody else care to speak? I want to thank everybody that did speak. I also want to encourage people, regardless of their point of view, to vote. It clearly is an obligation and a privilege to be able to vote, and regardless of your opinions, I encourage you to get out and exercise that privilege and duty. Okay, our next agenda item is a MART proposal. And we do have a memo of understanding. Who's going to walk us through this one?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to, but I believe Selectwoman Luck has been working very diligently with MART on many of these issues. If she wishes to address it, I would yield the floor to her.
Well, when you look at the memorandum of understanding, they've updated it so that they've taken away the thing that was the most objectionable, the $4 million umbrella. And they've also taken the insurance and moved it from MART taking the insurance on the van to the communities taking the insurance on the van. Now, I had mentioned earlier that there are 4 communities in the 15-community MART family that have MART take care of the van service directly, and they aren't involved in this memorandum of understanding because MART takes care of their Council on Aging vans. So for the remaining communities who will lease the vans from MART for like $1 a year so that they can get their own insurance, this memorandum of understanding is required.
In how many communities is that?
It's like 15.
Okay.
And when we were leaving the meeting about MART, Sue Doherty said, well, gee, if there's the option to have MART take over the van service, we should at least look into that. And so what we are trying to do is dig down to, all right, what's the difference if we take care of the MART service, or if the COA service, or if MART takes over it. And there is one sort of spreadsheet that if the town keeps the driver, there is right now it's a $79,000 price to us. The Medicare that we pay for the current drivers is $4,500. The workman's comp, we haven't been able to ascertain that yet. The auto insurance, our MIA has said $689. We're trying to dig down to them and ask, okay, is that just a flat fee, or does it depend on, is it affected by the type of service that we render? If we currently, the COA drivers in Lunenburg provide door-to-door service, so they'll get out of the van and walk someone to their door. And MART only does that service if someone's in a wheelchair and requires it. But they don't if, you're older and you've got, a couple extra bags or something, or their usual policy is door-to-door. But if you're in a wheelchair and you require someone to get you to your door, they will do that. MART provides, for our CO van drivers, MART provides some like classroom training, but no road training or ever like testing of driver's skills. And we thought that it would behoove us to have actual driver training if we were going to keep the service. And so Sue Doherty has looked into road training for 2 to 3 drivers, and we've gotten some ballpark figures, about $500. So, and another issue is the COA van service in Lunenburg is restricted to the one van. She's going to run the numbers on how many people were refused last year because the van just wasn't available. If MART provides the service, they have extra vans and they just call an extra van in if someone requires the service. Now, I'm sure that's not, if you had 16 people call on the same day, it probably wouldn't work. But in Lunenburg, that's probably not the case either. So, if MART supplies the driver, it's about $80,000. If we wanted to keep, you don't require a dispatcher because people can call directly to MART. But if you felt that you wanted to have your own dispatcher, you could, but it's surplus. You call them, you get the information to their dispatchers, so they wouldn't accept that charge. You'd have to pay that above and beyond. You could do it for, let's say, the first year as a transition, if you wanted to. So if MART supplies the driver and you keep your dispatcher, it's like 80 to 90. And we're looking at, as far as we can tell, maybe about 90 if the town keeps the driver. There is one sheet about some incidents in 2015 and 2016 that gave us pause for thought, and it made it seem more important, if we keep it in-house, to have driver testing, to make sure that the residents that we service, the town's most vulnerable residents, the elderly and the people that are disabled, get quality service and safe service. So that's kind of where we sit right now.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Vickers?
A couple questions on the information. The cost of the drivers themselves, the salaries that are paid for the 3 current drivers, I'm not seeing that on the worksheet. So is that included in the $79,000?
Yes.
Okay, so our cost would be the Medicare, and I'm a little bit unclear on the workers' comp. So we would be required, although the salary is paid for by MART, we would be required to carry the workers' comp insurance?
That's my understanding. But let's say MART paid it, it would be added to the 79.
Okay, so that $79,000 is basically for the drivers?
It's kind of what it costs the drivers, and, what the service costs us. That's what we pay to MART.
Okay. And what's the time sensitivity of this contract?
They want us to sign the memorandum of understanding as soon as possible. If we sign it and we decide to go to the other system at a later point, now, Sue Doherty had suggested that we try for a year, keeping the same service, but paying more attention and getting the drivers trained and being sort of more on top of it, to see if we can improve the safety and reduce the risk of any liability. And if that runs smoothly, then just keep it. If we decided to keep the driver and sign the memorandum of understanding, and in 6 months we decided to change, we could just change it with MART. So it's not really that time, we should, if we aren't sure what to do, we should just sign the memorandum of understanding and we can change our minds later.
Mr. Chair?
Mr.
If I may, through you to Mrs. Locke. So I'm looking at the 2 options, and we're looking basically at $89,000 versus $91,000 or $92,000. If we keep, is that correct?
So far, well, we don't have workman's comp in there.
Okay.
And I've also thrown in the $3,500, which is the estimated cost of the repair for the damage that wasn't reported.
Right, that we wouldn't have to,
Pay if we
wouldn't have to pay if we, right. So that would be a negative. That would be come off of our.
No, that's existing damage that is existing right
But
now.
that's not an annual, so I mean, that.
No, it's not annual.
Every year?
It's not
Right,
annual.
okay.
It's not annual.
So it's not, so it's really, it's an incident. Incidents are not presumably going to happen year to year, so.
Right.
So really, it's pretty close.
Yes,
Okay, and we're not limited to one van. We have multiple vans if we go to the MART one.
Right.
And I'm reading the chair of the Council on Aging's recommendation, and I don't, I'm trying to see what people think we lose if we go to the MART, except for what? I don't know.
I believe they like the care that, I talked to Martin and said, listen, if you take over the service for us and our drivers want to drive for you, could they be hired? And they said, well, maybe, And I said, well, could they do the Lunenburg route? And he goes, unlikely, because people bid for the routes. So you may not have the same drivers.
Okay,
I think that's it.
okay.
And you wouldn't, if I understand it correctly, you wouldn't have the door-to-door service and the carrying the groceries and all the little stuff that they do now?
You wouldn't have door-to-door unless you needed it, you know, unless you were in a wheelchair or something.
But you do have it if you're in a wheelchair?
Yes, that's what Bruno said from Mark.
And on the upside is, one of the incidents was somebody didn't secure, this is a public document, somebody didn't secure a wheelchair. If that person had gotten injured,
Right.
do we know what that, forget about the $3,500 in the car damage, do you know what that would have been?
Right.
And that's not like this, we're not guessing of what might happen. That incident actually did happen. We were just lucky that there was no physical injury to that person. You know, so that's a huge liability, a huge liability.
But we are carrying an umbrella policy.
Yeah, and those costs, if you make it's like anything, if you make a claim on it, those
Your
costs
costs
go way
go
up.
up.
Right.
And the fact is, the claim could be more than the $3 million umbrella policy.
Right, because they could seek additional
Who
damages.
oversees the drivers? Is that Sue Doherty now, Director of the Council on Aging?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like there's been, prior to her, that there may have been some supervision issues, or there may still be some issues on this. The other, just a procedural question too, is this something that Finance Committee should weigh in on? I mean, I know the contract allows us to terminate it with 60-day notice, so that we certainly can get out of there. I always look at that part. But I appreciate Phyllis's analysis and looking at some of the discussion with the town manager about this with Sue, but...
Do you have any input?
The money is basically the same, so I don't think it would have an impact on the budget. It's a matter of policy, whether or not you want to keep offering the door-to-door or curb-to-curb, because right now, as it stands, if there's someone at the grocery store and Mart picks them up, our drivers would help that elderly person with their bags on and off the van, whereas the other service, they just open the door and, you know, the person gets on when it gets on and he or she gets off, and that's it. So that there's a service component that you have to decide. As to the liability, we do have an umbrella policy. However, there's also the Massachusetts Tort Claims Act that, as long as it's just ordinary negligence, not wanton negligence, we're only exposed for $100,000. I think that's the standard right now. I haven't looked at the act recently, but the last time I looked at it, it was $100,000. So it really boils down to a policy decision. There are pros and cons to both sides. As Selectwoman Luck very eloquently said, having Mart take over, we can call a second van or a third van, and it's at our disposal. We don't have that in-house, but on the flip side, the door-to-door service is there. So, but the money is basically the same.
So is the van Mart's van when we drive?
Currently, yes. Currently, the way it works is it's Mart's van, and we pay an assessment. However, what's changing and what's going forward is they want to basically lease or sell the vans to us for $1. We will then have to insure them on our insurance policy, and we would have our own drivers if we kept it in-house, and there would still be the same, you know, numbers that you see there. But the major change is they want to get rid of the accident liability for, you know, if you look at what us in particular, what we in particular have done, we've had many accidents in a short period of time.
So two things then. One, if they're going to be our employees, which
I was just going
they
to say.
are our employees now,
No, they are not, I don't think.
whose employees are they?
I think they are.
They receive a town check?
They're
They're
our
town
employees, and
Okay.
that's still going to remain the same. thing that's possibly going to change. Well, what is definitely going to change is if we stick with the current system, what will definitely change is we own the van, we have to insure it.
Well, you lease it, right?
Or
No, we
lease,
don't
right.
own, we don't own
Lease
it.
it.
Van, and we have to...
No, currently, it's not our van. It's
Right,
not
but
registered.
we
to
we're
us.
not
But
gonna own
it
it,
never
lease it.
owns, it never becomes our van.
Well-
We still just lease
But
it.
Okay.
they're going to transfer it to us for $1.
No,
lease it.
lease it. They're not transferring it.
It's been discussed either. It could be a lease, it could be a sale, but the control of the van will be our responsibility in order to insure it.
So what
That's
it
the
need-
major
Who does
goal.
maintenance and
Who's
who
going
buys
to-
a new one when it,
They
It's still their van.
Pardon me?
The contract talks about that it still remains their van.
Right.
And in the event that there's damage to the van, and the van has to, it's totaled, for example.
Right.
Any payment from the insurance company goes to MART, because it
Correct.
is their property. So this contract does not propose that we take ownership of the van.
That was in the early drafts. So lease versus ownership, the major issue that is changing right now is who insures the van.
Right. but-
And we're
right.
debating whether or not to even avoid that whole discussion and just basically hire a service, hire MART to take over the entire thing. So those are the two tracks that we're looking at. So if we maintain the current system, we maintain the standard of service that we want to maintain because they're our employees. What changes is the responsibility to insure the van. However, they would have a flow-through up to $2,000 back to us. If we decide to go the other track, it would then be, we're just literally paying an assessment to have a service. And as we discussed, the pros and cons of both of those are before you.
Which would be a completely outsourced service at that point.
Right.
At that point, right.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
I just, there's a couple questions that I have relative to the employees, because I'm still very unclear. We currently pay an assessment to MART for the service. What do we currently pay?
We pay the $79,000.
Currently, we pay $79,724. And my original question was the salaries. So
It's
my
based,
yeah, go ahead.
No, for example, we have a dispatcher who works 12 and a half hours,
Okay.
and it's at that $11,000. That is embedded in the $79,000.
Okay, so if you subtract the 11, or actually almost 12, you subtract the 12, so that leaves, what is it? $67,000 that we're paying MART is paying in salaries, because we're paying MART, and MART is then distributing money to employees. Is that how this is working?
it also covers gas and other things. Each town has like their, for lack of a better explanation, our town pays our drivers X. Another town may pay Y. They're the employees of the town. That is all shown through the assessment because it's coming back. The payment is coming back.
Flows through.
It flows back through.
I guess that's what I'm not
I don't understand
understanding. That's what I'm not understanding, and I need to see that, because I need to have more information about the assessment itself, because if we're paying an assessment to MART for a service and I understand about the $12,000, I'd like to understand how this flows through. And the reason that I think it's very important to understand that is because any benefits associated with these drivers, you've highlighted workers' comp, which I would need to have the number on, but are there other benefits that are currently covered by MART that now would become the town's responsibility? So I'd like to understand the number of hours that we're currently paying individuals, what their retirement options are, what
I
their
could
health
answer
care
that for you
benefits
right now.
are, so...
I have those answers.
Okay.
They're non-benefited employees. We have, basically, if you add up the 3 drivers, they add up to 40 hours a week. So one is 15 hours a week, another is a little bit more than 15 hours a week, and another is about 10 hours a week. So approximately 40 hours a week. None of them have any benefits for retirement or vacation and along those lines. Well, they get the standard benefits that any non-union employee gets. They don't get retirement. They The workers' comp number, we haven't had that yet. I've asked Cook and Company to give it to us. They're still rating it. So those figures are basically...
They don't have medical?
No, they don't have, they're not part of the medical plan, because one employee is 15 hours, another employee is approximately 10 hours, another employee is approximately 15 hours, so no one's getting medical.
We do pay a portion of their Medicare.
We pay the normal contributions that you would pay, like FICA, SECA, Medicare, those types of things that you would normally pay, and that's the number you have before you.
Mart also, you take the van in and they do all the repairs, change the oil, change the fluids, they do all of the maintenance on the vehicles.
And when it's time for a new one, they pretty much buy a new one?
They provide it,
And
right.
that would still remain the same with the lease. It would be, after so many years, they would give us a new one. Likewise, we would still be required to bring it in for service every X amount of miles for an oil change and X amount of miles for transmission flush. All those things would remain the same, and all those costs are part of the assessment. It's built in. So we have, again, the two tracks. We can either keep the exact same type of model, other than whether or not we have to buy insurance and they pay us for the insurance, but the liability comes off their books, or we continue down the other track and we literally pay for Mart to just do everything.
And when Mark makes the calculation for what our charge is going to be, we have to do a very specific listing for them of how many people ride and go two ways or one way, and how many are ambulatory. So where it says on the town keeps the drivers, if service increases, cost increases, but that availability is somewhat limited because we've only got one van. So if we provide more service, we do pay more money. And the same thing happens if Mart supplies the drivers. If we increase the service, we pay more money, but in both of those cases, that we're providing more service, so we'd be happy about that. But that's kind of how that calculation is made.
Yeah, I pointed Mr. Bertram to Section 3A, which talks about that member communities are responsible for hiring their own town employees for the goal of providing the service, in our case, drivers and the dispatch. And then those in Section 4, compensation and method of reimbursement payment, talks about what are reimbursable expenses, and the drivers and all that is reimbursable expenses, as well as other things like Mrs. Luck said about, how many routes of service and the hours of service. So there's a whole calculation about what we can get reimbursed for. The drivers are part of that, although they're town employees. Their costs are reimbursable.
And each town has a different rate, as I said. So our rate may be $12 an hour for the dispatcher. Another town may be paying $18 for dispatcher. That's why if we went to the new system with Mart takes over everything, and if we decided to still keep an in-house dispatcher on top of it, duplication, they're basically saying, based on what you pay your dispatcher, we're just going to flow that through to you. If you want your dispatcher, you can pay another $12,000, because that's how much it would be. But we don't need another dispatcher. I mean, the person could literally call Mart directly if that's the way they wanted to do it.
And for example, some dispatchers make $12,000, some make $12 an hour, some make $18 an hour, some make $25 an hour. So it's not, material to them what you pay your dispatcher. They just they pay him and charge you back. So we don't have to decide tonight,
One of the things that strikes me is it seems that if it's a policy decision, certainly we should have this discussion, but if it's a cost issue, it seems to me the costs are pretty close.
Yeah, so it really isn't a cost issue.
And what I'm suggesting is that if the Council on Aging unanimously supports leaving it the way it is, it would seem to me that we help manage their budget, and if either their insurance experience or their level of service drives them to need to make a change or want to make a change, that's the time to change something. But otherwise, if it's just a matter of signing the MOU to allow it to continue the way it is now and transfer the insurance, that's the decision before us, is kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, one thing is did not review this material either, it's just not a concern to them.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, there is one thing that Selectwoman Luck brought up that should be on everyone's mind, is if we keep the service in-house, we are making policy addressing how we offer the best service going forward with driver training and making sure that all of our drivers have the best on-street training, because that isn't offered through MART. MART, as she eloquently stated, I'm just reiterating, MART trains them on how to fasten belts and how to do CPR and all of that. They don't physically put the driver behind the wheel and see if they can navigate and back up and go through a slalom course. We're going to, assuming we keep it in-house, we're going to enforce that as a policy, that we have that training up front and maintain it going forward.
So I have two questions. One is auto insurance and the claims that need to be paid. Are those going to be paid out of our insurance line item on our budget as opposed to the Council on Aging budget?
The existing $3,500 bill?
And the regular, the auto insurance?
Well, going forward,
we pay that and get reimbursed by...
We'll have to pay for it, and then they will reimburse us up to $2,000. So however we make that adjustment is going to flow through quickly.
And the driver training, would the Council on Aging be paying for that?
We haven't gotten that far in the policy decision. We're just at the point of getting ideas on how much it's going to cost and designing the actual program. We're at that stage, but that's definitely the idea going forward.
The reason I'm asking is that I believe that we may be paying for insurance out of the insurance line item, get whatever reimbursement that seems appropriate, but I would want to make sure that whatever claims that might be paid, that the Council on Aging is made aware of it, and that it becomes a public record during the review of this process.
Very well noted.
And it would seem like if we were going to do driver road training, that it should come, I would think it would come out of the Council on Aging budget, because it's their decision to keep the to keep it in-house. So it would seem like that would be part of the package. Because if you don't keep it in-house, you take it to MART, and then that goes away.
Yeah. And I'm assuming MART has not been willing to reimburse us for the driver training?
No, because they do like classroom training. They have there are federal requirements, as you could imagine, for training, and they meet all of those. And so if you wanted to provide something other than that, then it's your option.
So I'm fine with the Council on Aging keeping this in-house with the idea that it needs to be properly managed, and I think the dialogue that's been going on that point. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that during the budget process this next year, that this would get reviewed by the Finance Committee. So I'd make a motion that we approve the MOU as presented by MART.
Second.
And I would just note that we do have the ability to get out of it with a 60-day notice if we decide we don't like it.
Any further discussion?
Well, before, I do have a question. I mean, if we're going to keep the same thing, why wouldn't we like it?
Because some other expertise, I mean, this is coming light to us because there's been some issue with the way things have run.
Okay.
So we may find as the way things are run, but with this memorandum of agreement, that it's not working the way we expected, and therefore we want to change it again. So we can get out of it if we need to.
And keeping it in-house may become too cumbersome if they're going to be much more diligent with checking things, and, perhaps, there could be a point where they go, it's not really worth it. Unlikely, but they could decide that they don't want to. Or, issues could come up where we just decide that the liability is too great and the safety is not there, right?
Yeah. The COA chairman's letter says, you know, a one-year trial period. I think what Mr. Ubisola was saying is that
Right.
60 days, that could be longer or shorter than a year if we learned something significant.
Right, but I just want to point out that 1-year trial period would mean that you're changing something. So I would understand that but we're not changing anything. So what 1-year
Well, we
trial
are
of
taking the-
keeping
we
what
are-
have.
It was
That's
based
like
on...
1-year trial of keeping the status quo is not really a trial.
Well, it's
period.
not the status quo because we're taking the insurance on and we don't know what the auto insurance, what the workers' comp's going to cost us.
But none of his letter dealt with that.
No,
His letter was just about services, so.
Right,
so-
the letter was,
So we know.
I apologize. The letter was addressing the issue of whether or not to go completely with MART or to keep it in-house. They generated this letter because they knew of our discussions.
No,
and
I understand what the
brought it
letter is. I'm just saying that he talks about a 1-year trial, but we're not really trying anything.
Well,
what I'm saying. So-
They are, the Council on Aging is going to do a better job. There are things, as you can imagine, that haven't been done that need to be done. Every time you gas up, you're supposed to check all of the fluids, for example. And so there should be a checklist generated so that, and you are supposed to go around the van every morning and make sure that if you note any dents, scratches, or anything like that.
Which clearly wasn't done for a year.
Well, I think that was sometimes done, but
It was probably done when they saw that they caused the damage and they decided not to report it.
so there's going to be greater vigilance.
Because we have the ability
Greater
to
supervision.
get out of it, I won't oppose it, but I don't, we'll see. I mean, the problem is that the we'll see part is the liability part, and once you're in there, then we don't have to see, so.
I won't vote against it, but I do have some concerns. I think there may be some additional costs that we're not aware of right now. I do think there is a slight increase because the reality is if we went to MART and didn't keep our local dispatcher, we would be saving that $12,000. So there is a cost savings. So there, you know, we are assuming that cost. Additionally, I think that I'm concerned with the liability, given the accident report and the incidences that are outlined. I do have some concerns. So in the event that we find that continues, I think our insurance costs are going to be substantially higher. Potentially, our liability is going to be higher. So I do have some concerns, and so I would vote in favor of it somewhat reluctantly.
I'd also say that we keep talking about, this board has talked about over the years, looking for anything that we can outsource, and here is a transportation service that should really, in fact, except for that you know the driver, and I'm assuming that if these people who are MART drivers that they would hire would probably have regular schedules, and you'd get to know them like you would anybody else. You know, if you take the M2 bus in New York, eventually you take it enough at the same time, the same person's driving it. So, you know, I think that this is a chance to outsource it with no extra cost, and it's all fixed costs to the town, as opposed to open-ended costs.
Unknown costs, right. And the other concern, you know, I understand they're researching the number of refused calls, but that's another thing to keep in mind, that there wouldn't be refused calls if we went to the MART model, because they have ample vans in service, so we could provide those services to anyone that needed them.
So I would say, I would like it to be put on an agenda item that, you know, again, I'm not going to
A
vote
review.
against it, but, right, we would review it at whenever
So what happens if we don't sign it? The existing contract works?
Well, the answer to that, Mr. Eversole, is that the memorandum of understanding is so that they can move forward with the group and getting this new process moving. In our meeting with them, they said that they would be willing with individual entities, individual towns, if there was still debate going on, they wanted it done by November 1. But if there were individual communities that were still debating things, talking about things, on a case-by-case basis, they'd be willing to entertain December 1, and even an extension after that. So this memorandum of understanding is because we're part of a consortium, part of a group, and they want the whole entire group to be on board, so that way they can rate the entire group's liability and insurance. And they can't be doing it piecemeal, and that's what this is about.
But the question I have is that, do we have an existing contract with MART that has run out? Or are they unilaterally asking for a new contract that supersedes that contract?
That's a question I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'll have to get that answer. I could make an assumption, but I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, we have a motion in a second.
Yeah, we have, unless you plan to change it as a result of that question.
I have a point of order. Selectman Ebersol motioned, seconded by Selectman Luck, and voted all aye.
We didn't vote.
We didn't vote yet.
We didn't vote?
No.
Then I stand corrected. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just, my concern is that I don't know if we would have something more, with more detail as far as the added insurance costs.
Since we potentially, there's no requirement that we do this evening.
Right, that's
I
right.
would like to propose, and...
I would withdraw my motion if
Yeah.
the second would.
Would the second accept that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I would like to propose that we get the information on the number of refused calls, we get the workers' compensation costs before we vote.
Okay.
And
And I think maybe we'll think about this, maybe we want to have either Sue or
I think we do.
Pete
I
or
think
somebody
we do.
here.
I think we do.
Well, and the other question then, I go back to what I said before about whether the Finance Committee should be
Right.
consulted, because we're talking about outsourcing or not outsourcing, and how does this fit into the overall budget that's going to be coming up? So,
I do think it makes sense to invite the Finance Committee to participate in the
Sure.
discussion.
Okay, so we'll put that on another agenda, but relatively short
but thank you
timeframe.
for all the work's done so far.
Yeah.
If you need me to research anything else, let me know.
Thank you.
Selectman Ebersol just noted that I will get that information to you as to the existence of a current contract.
Okay, our next item is the RFP for legal counsel discussion. And I believe that in your package, you have the proposed RFP with the changes that we suggested last time. And I think we're looking to determine, one, if that's acceptable, and two, what do we do with it?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The issues that I have for the board are, as you stated, but most importantly, what's your time frame? If you accept this, when do you want it to go out? I mean, we're looking at special town meeting. Do you want the warrant articles for special town meeting to be out there being looked at by town council at the same time that we're going out for bid? I mean, that's all a policy decision of you, so just looking for guidance. And when do you want it out, and when do you want it back?
Well, I think we want it, personally, I want it out as soon as possible, and I want it back in a reasonable amount of time, and frankly, I would look to your guidance as to what's a reasonable amount of time.
Normally, for something like this, it depends on if you want to bring them before you, so 45 days would be on the outside, 30 days would be reasonable, but that's putting us right dead smack in the middle of everything that's going on with town meeting, and that's basically where we're at. And then we're looking at the holidays, I mean, so, it's just a matter of crunching the actual numbers on a calendar and, what works for us. 30 days is reasonable, but that puts us special town meeting.
Does this RFP require a certified procurement officer?
No, it does not,
Okay.
because we do not even have to do an RFP for this.
Okay.
So we're at our leisure.
So I'll just speak to the document. So I'm fine with the document, with the changes made that the interim town manager has put in after last week's meeting. So I'm okay with the document. I don't know if my colleagues are here.
Yes, I am.
I'm fine with it as well.
So then it's just a matter of timing. I think the issue is, even if we would put it out tomorrow, and we left it out for people to respond for 3 weeks. That puts us in the middle of November, and then you're into the holidays, and I don't know, interviewing people around Christmas time.
I don't think that that's, personally, I understand that it's the holidays, but people still work around the holidays. And I think that this is an important issue. All of us have had a lot of frustration with the lack of response by town council, and I think it's been a priority for all of us, and I think that we need to move forward. I don't want to wait, and I think if we push it out, then we're going to be right in the middle of budgeting and getting ready for annual town meeting.
It's always something.
So I'd prefer to do it around the holidays versus in the middle of the budget season.
The reason I mention the holidays is not because of the inconvenience to the people who may be applying. It's really to the fact that they may not apply at all, and you'd want to get the biggest pool. It's kind of like when the town manager left, we kind of delayed putting out the applications because, or the notice, because nobody's going to respond in August, because it's vacation time and people aren't around. Well, holidays are the same thing. I don't know the response you'll get from people. That's all my concern is.
But in that event, so if we didn't get the respondents that we had hoped for, we can always not
Do it again.
no, we can always do it again.
So what is this publication schedule for the MMA Beacon? Because we talked about putting it there as well, at least the online version.
Basically, they need a short amount of time. It depends if you want it in the print or if you want it on the internet. If you want it on the internet, it's pretty quick. If you want it in print, it's a few weeks' notice, depending on if you meet the deadline, if you don't meet the print deadline. So, but I mean, nowadays, I think internet is probably safe.
So 45 days brings us pretty close to the first or second week of December for it to be due back. And then we'd want to schedule appointments, which then brings us into
January.
the first week of January, first, second week of January.
Sounds
I think
doable.
we do it.
Yep.
I think people will want to do the business or they won't. Does that give you enough direction, or do we need a vote?
No, it's perfectly fine. I mean, it doesn't require a vote, just needed direction.
We're okay with that? Good. All right.
Thank you.
Picking up some steam here.
I don't know about steam, I think we're kind of creeping along.
Okay, our next item is to request to waive building permit fees for the DPW and school solar installations.
So my question to you, Mr. Chair, through you, I should say, to, I don't know, maybe Mr. Londa knows this, or maybe we have historical, did we do this for the other ones? Everything comes out of history. Did we do this for the other projects? Did we waive them?
Do we do it for the the now Turkey Hill Elementary
Turkey
School?
Hill Elementary.
John Londa. I know that we have waived the building permit fees for a lot of public building, public construction. I couldn't really remember, I don't really remember what we did for the Turkey Hill Solar.
Because the question I have is that if we were to waive this, do we then get a better rate from Select than we're currently going to be proposed to get? Because if we're not, then we're waiving it and they're getting the benefit and we are not.
The language that is currently in the contract that hasn't been signed would have them responsible for building permit fees.
The question that, if the contract currently has it in there, one of the concerns that I have is there's going to be a number of electrical inspections, I would envision. And the way that the electrical inspector is paid for is a percentage of the fees. So who is going to assume that cost? I would assume then it would be us. So I'd need to understand what that potential cost is.
I mean, I asked for precedence because precedence is important in these things, but by rights, it's $1 million project, and these costs are nothing. They literally are nothing, and if the company is set in a contract to pay them, then you should just pay them.
Yeah.
It's not like they're not doing this pro bono. They're going to make a lot of money off these. I mean, we're going to save money too, so it's a win-win, but when I mean, the electrical inspections, what do they cost? $100 at a time? So out of $1 million project?
I think the fee is based, I think it's based on the cost of the project, and it's based on a percentage of the project. So it's not I believe, that's something that I would want to understand, but I believe that the electrical fees are based on a percentage of the project.
That wouldn't, I mean, logically, it wouldn't make sense.
Well, building permit fees definitely are.
I can't speak to this town, but my last town, and I don't know if this is a general law, the building permit was based on
The project
on a
cost.
percentage, but all of the other ones were a flat rate. Plumbing, electrical, gas, they were all a flat rate, but sometimes they included multiple inspections. It was
Right, like the city,
$25 every time.
like the city of Newburyport, there's an inspection fee, and I have no idea with this type of installation, how many inspections we're talking about.
So the electrical fee is solar application, it says $100.
Okay.
Commercial, but that's the whole building, the biggest fee is $750, so that's, I don't think they really necessarily have a fee that's reflective of the reality for that, so I'm not sure what that would be.
And if I had I mean, I don't want to guess. If I had to venture a guess, we've waived fees, building fees for projects that the town itself
Right.
Is
has
pay- is-
none.
is
So
pay-
we don't have to pay ourselves. We
Right,
don't really waive them for private entities.
Right, and we didn't waive them when the Eagle, I can't remember what the name of it was, but when the old primary school project came forward and they wanted us to waive the fees, we didn't waive the fees.
So we don't have a motion, so we don't have any waiver.
But we do have a letter in our package for
Right.
them requesting us to
But if we
waive
don't
the
take
fees.
any action, then there's no waiver.
Okay.
So again, they don't have, this is not closed. We can certainly table this when we have next week, if we have a special meeting.
I mean, if-
And if we can find out what we did on the other ones, that'd be great.
And if we could find out what the permit fees would be.
Right.
And I would want to know whether we get it back or whether they're basically going to get it into their pocket versus ours.
Yeah, I think we,
Fair
I
enough.
think, understood, we all know the answer to that.
Okay. Number 5 is a notice to remove from 61B the property at 200 Reservoir Road. Want to walk us through that one?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, the town's received a letter. It's 61B, the Larkin property, 200 Reservoir Road. Per the statute, they have a right to remove it from the chapter. However, they would have to first give the town a right of first refusal, which we have 120 days to act on that. The town would have to pay a fair market value, would have to pay to have it appraised fair market value, not just the assessor's numbers. Town meeting would have to vote to purchase it. If we wanted to move on this, it would have to go on the special town meeting warrant, would have to pay for the market analysis. If the town does not purchase the property, the Larkins have to pay the statutory amount of back taxes, which currently sits at approximately $12,000.
Do we know what the professional market analysis would cost?
I do not have that number, but what we would have to do is hire quote of them, and then go for the least best qualified, how that works, lowest bidder that gives us the most responsive and responsible bidder.
And have we circulated this to Conservation Commission or Planning to see if there's a potential interest or a environmental reason that we should?
It's going through the checklist, but I haven't received anything back yet. Elaine has that on the to-do list to make sure it goes to all of those individuals, assuming that it's something that the town may want.
I would also send it to the Lunenburg Water District since they're in a butter, even though they're not a town department, just for the notice of information. What we've done recently is that this has been sent to town council to review for sufficiency for notice, but only if we thought we were going to do it, so we wouldn't spend legal expense.
Right.
Although if we sent it to them, they probably would get back in time for us.
It's 120 days after all.
After 45 days.
Right.
That being said, I don't think we should send it to town council unless we hear something from a town department who feels that this is something that we would want to purchase. It's not next to existing conservation land, but it is next to the Lunenburg Water District and the Lunenburg Sportsman's Club.
It is the Lunenburg.
It is the Lunenburg Sportsman's Club, yeah. That's the B portion of the 61, it's recreational use. And,
So this land is currently owned by the Lunenburg Sportsman's Club?
yes.
Is it all five lots?
It's used by the Sportsman's Club, it's owned by the Larkins, and I don't know what their arrangement is, a lease or whatever, but it's used by the Sportsman's Club.
Okay.
But on the plot plan, it's all 5 lots, that's the whole property, right?
That's correct.
So will the Sportsman's Club go away? I mean, is
No,
is
this
it
is
all
the-
of the
this-
land, or is it?
This is
will
the
shoot on
land, this
these
is the land
properties.
in front, this is not their land.
Oh, okay.
So this is a Form A that was signed by the planning board on July of this year. So this was an anticipation of what the property would worth. There's wetlands on the property, but the way they built the lots, they'll be able to put houses on portions of the lots, which are 4 acres apart piece.
So I guess one of the questions I have, because in the past, every time something's come out of chapter, we've asked, it's almost always looked at as a sale, and I don't know how we approach something, and I don't know that we ever have before, approach something that's come out of chapter with no current sale.
That's a different portion of the same statute.
Right, I know, and I'm not familiar with it, so it'd be interesting to know, as Mr. Ebersol said, have they met, is this all we need to know to be notified? And is the clock started or not? So.
Yeah.
But I think getting it to the other
Yeah.
committees and commissions would be interesting to see if they feel it has any value anyway.
It should be noted that we're potentially, another one of the action items before you is a special town meeting warrant discussion. And if this were something that we would want to pursue, it probably should be as part of a warrant. You can always table it for purpose of defeat, but you can't add it after the fact. So just putting that out there.
What would be helpful to me also is, I know if this was July of this year, the assessors probably haven't determined what the value would be if it came out.
No, they have, as of today, I have a 30-day guarantee of the back taxes, and it's just under $12,000.
No, I'm sorry, I was wondering whether the assessors would opine on what they thought the property would be worth if they were to assess it.
I'll be happy to ask that, but
Is that going to qualify as a market now?
No,
okay.
it's an indicator. The assessors are pretty current with most of their appraisals.
Okay.
So it would just give you an indicator.
so
That's okay,
noted,
good.
Selectman Eversol, I'll get you that information as well.
Because if it's 5 lots, even at 100,000, that's 500,000. If it's 200, it's $1 million.
Right.
It's 20 acres plus or minus, and I have no idea how many wetlands and whatnot, so if you get 20 acres plus or minus, it's, significant amount of acreage anyway. I don't know how many lots they could
But
potentially get out of it.
They've got 5 lots there, and so lots in Lunenburg go anywhere from 100 to 200, depending on the location. And there's town water that goes by there now.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah, and so it should be noted that the letter we received was also sent to the Planning Board, the Board of Assessors, the Conservation Commission, and the State Forester, as
Correct.
well as ourselves, so they all have it.
But we
But
should
we're-
ask
we're-
for their,
ask for
we
their
should ask
Right,
for their
we have
opinion.
not gotten the checklist back indicating. It's, just for background information, I met with the attorney that represents the family, and he indicated that years ago, the Water District actually bought a portion of this land. I guess it was around 5 acres he mentioned. It gave them access to the wellhead. So it, very well, to your point, very well might be something they want, because if that's where the wellhead is, you've got an aquifer there. If you got an aquifer there, maybe you want to protect it.
So we need everybody to weigh in.
Okay.
So noted.
Is there, I missed whether or not there's a statutory time frame in which we have to act,
120 days from the time we received the letter. So
which
that
is October
if in
11th?
fact-
That's not true. 120 days from the time that they've met the requirements of notification by law, which we don't know they've met yet. We need to know that.
We have found that the notices had been
Very
insufficient.
deficient, right.
So therefore, they had to redo it, depending on the case. And when we found that it was a property that we thought we might want to do, we had the council respond to them. If it was something we didn't want, we didn't spend the money on the council.
very well.
All right. Okay. MJTC, Board of Selectmen.
It's a continuation from last week, Mr. Chairman. If you want some background, I can go into it, but
Well, I have a question, if that's okay. Ken Shennis from the planning board had been serving as the MJTC representatives. Has he resigned? Because,
This is-
okay,
We've
because,
gotten an email, I can't remember where the email was from, but basically, maybe from him, through the planning board, that he is traveling a lot and cannot make a lot of the meetings, and so I can't remember if it was
I
the
thought it was the gen- I thought it was the
MJTC
gen-
themselves saying, listen, it would be very helpful if you had a secondary person who could sit
Okay.
in on his absence.
That's what this is.
okay,
That's what
so we're
I
looking for an alternate.
Alternate designee.
We're looking for an alternate designee, okay. Because right now on the website, it lists Ken as both. The appointed by Selectman Mayor is Ken. Appointed by Planning Board is also Ken. So now we're looking for the designee by the Board of Selectmen.
that's correct.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, because this one says,
Okay.
They meet the third
Regional
Wednesday of every
Regional
month at
Request.
7 PM. Well, I have a board meeting every Wednesday, that Wednesday.
Now, we're also looking for a member to the MRPC, according to this.
The two separate appointments.
Oh, that's the regional planning is the alternate designee.
Right, that could be a resident so long as it's, it can be the board can appoint anyone so long as they are a resident.
So who's the primary from MRPC?
For MRPC, that's a vacant right now, there's nobody, that's why we're looking for someone. And as for the MJTC, that's the gentleman, as noted earlier, but
From
we're
the planning
having
board.
trouble making the meetings.
yeah, but this letter says they're vacant, so it says that he's not serving.
No, it's, if you look at the MRPC, well, the MJTC doesn't say this, but under the MRPC, it's that the select board's appointment is an alternate.
Oh, okay.
But they don't say that about the MJTC, so I think Ken is probably the MRPC,
Right.
Oh, okay.
and we don't have an MJTC representative.
No, Ken is the MJTC.
Okay, well, then this is inaccurate.
Yeah,
This-
no,
this letter we got.
this letter is inaccurate. MJTC, because Ken reports at the planning board meetings, and he's listed on their website as the MJTC representative.
Unless the same thing about the MRPC applies to the MJTC here. but-
Yeah, my understanding is that they require two, well, I'm not sure they require, but you can have two on the MJTC, and Ken is one of them.
Right.
And that they require a selectman or a selectman designee on MRPC, and we don't have anybody.
Right. They don't require it, they just are asking.
right,
I mean,
right.
obviously, it's
Yeah,
beneficial. Problem is, we need somebody who wants to do it.
Exactly.
If you look at the email dated October 14th from Linda Parmenter to Elaine, under the bold print, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, attachment 1 is the appointment form for the planning board. The appointee to the MRPC must be a planning board member. The appointee must be elected by the planning board and certified in writing attached form. Attachment 2 is an appointment form for the select board. The select board can appoint anyone as long as the appointee is a resident, and it goes on and on and on. Then they go on to the MJTC. This is explaining as,
All right, let's take one at a time.
okay,
So do we have anybody on the MRPC from the planning commission?
Yeah, Ken.
that's the gentleman that's
Oh, that's
having
Ken.
trouble. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to have somebody
We're
from here
supposed to
too?
also have someone from the Board of Selectmen.
But it doesn't have to be a Board of Selectmen?
No, you
No.
can appoint any resident.
Okay.
you could appoint yourselves, but you could appoint a
And it
resident.
would be hard for us to be one of them because they meet on Tuesdays.
No, they're changing, well, they do now, but they're changing to Thursday
Oh, okay. first
after
Thursday.
January.
Okay.
And they actually meet on the last Tuesday of the month, which
Well,
we occasionally don't meet on.
Right. But we have been.
Okay. So I guess one of the things we're doing is is calling out for volunteers, for anyone who would like to fill out a talent bank form and specifically to be a member of the regional planning, the Montechusett Regional Planning, what is it, Commission?
Commission, I think.
Yeah. So let's start there. Let's say it's a kind of urgent request, and it's a good opportunity to get involved, and if anybody's interested, to let us know.
And I think we should put perhaps check with the planning board and see if there's anyone from the planning
Right.
board that would be interested in
Right.
serving on the Regional Planning Commission.
Yep, I agree. And the second one, of course, is the
MJTC.
Montechusett, well, I don't want to use the initials, so nobody's going to apply to that because they won't even know what it is. So the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee, not that that sounds all that alluring either, but at least you know what it is. I mean, who doesn't want to be on the Joint Transportation Committee?
And that one also, we can appoint a resident.
Yes.
The appointees to the MJTC can be anyone. One representative is an appointee of the planning board, and the other is an appointee of the select board. The planning board's appointee must be certified in writing by the planning board, and the select board's appointee must be certified
Okay.
in writing by the select board,
Okay.
or the town manager.
So then we're also looking for someone who would be interested in the joint transportation opportunity.
That's a good opportunity.
Let's leave it at that for now. and deal with it
Yeah,
again
let's
next
leave it at that, yeah.
Right. All righty.
Let's keep going.
Now we have the special town meeting discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you vote to open the special town meeting warrants. That way we can start collecting all of the articles that come before us. For your information, the moderator is available for both nights that are before you. We have 11/28 and December 5th. December 5th comes with a small conflict. It's not a major deal. We can work around it, but it's not as smooth as the 28th. Also, December 5th would really squeeze the tax rate in the assessor's office. They highly request that we make it as early as possible, but even 11/28 is squeezing my office to the brink. I mean, we still have to get things to town council, and we have to, print it and mail it, so 11/28 is cutting it very short. Moving on to the next portion of that, currently I have a bunch of potential special town meeting articles for your consideration. I've broken them down into what is more than likely a solid consideration, and those that are unlikely to be ready for various reasons. We have a vote to ratify the police memorandum of understanding. We have the right of first refusal for the 61B Larkin property that we were just speaking of, the tax rate adjustment, the levy limit capacity. We have an adjustment for the PAC, and we also have the authorization of the Board of Selectmen to sell off surplus buildings and land so we can move forward on all of the projects that we're looking at, the Passios building, the primary building, et cetera. Those are the ones that I believe are likely to be ready, just moving forward with the information that we have to get together. those unlikely to be ready for special town meeting, but, under the grace of God, perhaps we might be able to get it. Earth removal bylaw, which is from a prior town meeting, but it probably won't be ready because they'd have to schedule public hearings. It'd also have to, the bylaw would have to go to town council. I don't see it happening. Similar for the special town meeting cemetery article. It was likewise an earlier article before the town, but for the same reasons, it probably won't be ready. And lastly, the same exact reasons, a zoning bylaw amendment probably won't be ready for the special town meeting. These are all things that we'll probably have to schedule in May.
I think the cemetery article actually was our Scrivener's error in that it was approved by us to be in the warrant and then it wasn't printed.
Correct.
Right.
So we have the article. The article should be perfectly fine.
Okay.
And so it should be somewhere.
So it's just a matter of doing a public hearing, and, if we post that, we can get a public hearing
We
in
have
time.
a public hearing on the cemetery?
I don't know.
I thought it was just to authorize them to spend money.
Yeah, I don't think
Is that
we need,
what I'm-
yeah, we don't need
Wasn't-
we don't need a
wasn't-
public
It
hearing.
may not be a public hearing.
It's not a public
Okay,
hearing.
so it was a public hearing issue at
No,
all? Okay, so
no.
even easier then, thank you.
And we want to add
I
Summer
apologize
Street,
to the board, but I'm coming
Oh,
into this
that's
at
fine.
the
That-
11th hour.
That's why we're telling you.
and we want to add Summer Street engineering. I mean, we can do that under the $160,000 worth of levy limit, but we want
Right.
to make sure that's on our radar, the Summer Street engineering.
Well, that's the primary reason, too.
Yeah, I think that is the article that's kind of driving the meeting, and the rest of them are
Right, that,
Of the
opportunistic.
two choices, Mr. Chair, I mean, I would say that we should shoot not for the November 28th special town meeting, A, because the school is free and there's no scheduling conflict, and it gives the assessors time to set the tax rate, which I think is important. So, I would suggest that we follow that timeline, which means opening the warrant tonight. Not tonight,
Tonight.
I would recommend opening it as soon as possible, that way we can start collecting things.
Now, the
Closing.
28th is the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday,
Correct.
That's correct.
just a note.
So I'd make a motion, we, as Mr. Alonso stated, open the warrant tonight for a November 28th meeting with a closing the warrant on Tuesday, October 25th, a week from tonight at 6 PM.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I apologize, who made the second on that?
I did.
Thank you, I was looking down, I didn't catch it.
Okay, so then I think we agree that the 5 plus the cemetery are the ones we're going to shoot to have ready, and we'll have to do some work on that.
In Summer Street as well.
Well, the warrant's open,
Well,
so any way
right.
that people can get things in.
Yeah, Summer
Right.
Street will be within number 3.
Yeah, Summer Street's a
Right.
part of number
Because we're
3.
basically, and we ought to start talking about what we're going to do with the remaining amount of money.
Yep.
Whether it goes into reserve fund or
Mhm.
roads or
Right.
painting the town hall.
Should invite you to the capital plan
I was going to
meeting.
say, just move it to the capital planning.
Okay, so we're okay on that item for now? All righty. Number 8.
Mr. Chairman, before you, you have the letter that needs to go to the Department of Education regarding the solar panels on the high school. It's part of the statute that we have to request. First, we have to note that it's surplus and it's not going to affect any educational activities. And there's a motion before you, if you look there, that's a suggested wording. This likewise has to be voted and signed by also the school committee. So I put that before you.
If you so want, I can read the motion.
Please.
So I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to indicate the Lunenburg Middle High School rooftop space is surplus and the leasing of that space for the purpose intended will not interfere with our educational programs, and that we send a letter to the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education requesting his or her approval for the leasing of surplus space on the roof of the Lunenburg Middle High School.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just under discussion, which I didn't bring up under, well, we didn't have the opportunity to do it because we weren't deliberating. But my question that I've asked before, which is, what is the design for solar that's going to go on the school? And how the visibility of that is. I don't think we've seen a design. I'm still going to support this because we need to get this part through the process, but I still would want to see some sort of design with what's going to go on the school.
As this is at least the second, if not third or fourth time you've requested that, I'd like it to be part of the package when we finally do decide when we're going to talk about the solar. Okay?
If it pleases the board, Mr. Londa may have an answer for the board.
Well, we're not going to deliberate, so why don't, do we want to hear it? I guess.
Well,
Go on,
but he's
John.
here.
Yeah, go on, John.
So the design that we're proposing on the solar has panels on the gym roof and on the auditorium roof and other flat roofs to include the two south-facing shingled roofs. That represents another 3,800 square feet of space. So there would be panels visible on the school. The bulk of the panels will be on the flat roof.
So in your dealings with Borrego and their representative in this, I would ask that for this meeting, if they can come up with, architectural views of what it would look like from the street, what that would look like. I think that's what Mr. Eversole, and if not Mr. Eversole, certainly what I would be looking for.
Yeah, we do have something from them. I'll get it so it's updated.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
Now, I have a question, not that this matters terribly much in this case, not for you, John, just, so the letter we're sending specifically cites out Borrego. Let's say something happens with this, we don't come to terms on this deal. Do we have to resubmit this letter later on, or is it declaring it surplus and the letter is just indicating what we're looking to do with it now?
Right.
If we do the same thing with another company, we wouldn't have to rewrite to them.
I spoke with the Department of Ed, and the answers along those lines are, we have to seek the permission to do it. Now, if they give us the permission, we can move forward, but if things change, if something is different, we have to go back and tell them something is different.
Okay.
But I don't imagine that the name of who is running it or the company is at issue. The issue is whether or not the actual panels have any effect on the education of the students and/or the surplus.
Fair enough.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I believe I signed for us, if that's acceptable to the board.
Yes, that is.
Okay. Well, I'll do that before we
Yes, in
leave.
this package.
Okay. All righty. Okay, we have some minutes.
We do, Mr. Chairman.
I have minutes here from October 4th of 2016 and November 4th of 2014. Catching up?
2014?
Yes.
I wasn't even sure that
There was one that was
Bloomberg
missing.
was around back then.
Oh, yeah. Warrants?
Yes, sir. This first one.
Okay. This is a payroll in the amount of,
Negative.
it's a negative $338.01. Okay. Okay, this is a payroll for the schools in the amount of $720,200.91.
Accounts payable for that amount.
Accounts payable in the amount of $149,702.24.
And there's your amount.
and the middle school, high school construction in the amount of $985,713.01. And finally, accounts payable in the amount of
163, 155, and 11.
$163,155.11. Thank you.
That's.
Do you have any action file issues? Okay, committee reports. Let's start on this end. Mr. Ribasol?
None for me.
Mr. Wanzo?
Cable Advisory, we didn't have a quorum last night, so our next meeting is going to be, and we're giving the PAC two more meetings to finalize the business plan, so we're going to have our next meeting tentatively on December 12th, Monday, December 12th. School Building Committee met last Wednesday, and the progress, as anybody can see, is all going very well. They've sodded the front fields. The greenhouses, I think, if it's not at completion, it will be at completion this week. The outdoor classroom is being finalized. We did a recap of the funding and what has been spent, and as of last Wednesday, the project is coming in approximately $4.3 million under budget. So it is at near completion. There's very few things that would add to any of that. There's one or two small outstanding change orders that may get added, but they're minor. We did add in the scoreboard, and that was done out of proceeds of the rebate from the asbestos abatement, which was part of the funding back to Shawmut, so it doesn't increase the cost of the project at all, because it's all under that line item. So we are looking at significantly greater than $4 million in savings. That's given a very big buffer of $300,000, which we don't believe we're going to use. So that was all excellent news. And I asked specifically at that meeting how it was working from a technology standpoint, from an educational standpoint, and so everybody who was there and people I spoke with said that it's been received incredibly well by the teachers, by the administration, by the students, and it really has made a world of difference in kind of a school spirit way that it's really hard to, quantify. So everything is going extremely well, and project stays online. We don't believe that we will have regular meetings after our December meeting, because anything that would be left will be sporadic through the spring until the final spring landscaping work is done, where the whole final button-up of the project will be done. That's all I have.
Ms. Becker?
Conservation Commission is meeting tomorrow night. Want to remind people, and I may have misspoke last week, so I want to correct that. The Walks in the Woods is Sunday, October 23rd at 9:30. Meet at the Ritter if you're interested in attending. There'll be a series of a couple different walks at different locations to look at foliage. So again, that's Sunday, 10/23 at 9:30 at the Ritter. The MPO meeting is tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and the planning board did not meet yet this month. They will meet on October 24th.
The school committee is meeting tomorrow evening, 10:19, in the middle school collaborative room. The Stormwater Task Force next meeting is 10:27. The Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition is hosting a workshop on Friday, October 28th. Matt Morrow has signed up to attend, and that's really good news, and hopefully some others will be able to as well. There's going to be a stormwater financing forum held November 15th and 16th at the University of New Hampshire in Durham. I'm going to attend, but if our BOS business demands, I'll scoot down that night. The ZBA is hearing a petition by the owners of Asian Imperial to allow for more parking. The proposed layout does not meet the current zoning requirements. And they're also hearing a petition for residents at 172 Leominster Road. They want to construct a new home, but live in the existing building until their new home is ready to occupy, and then remove the existing dwelling.
Building reuse met last evening and reviewed some draft RFPs for requesting bids on the 5 buildings that were part of the building reuse study, plus one that included a more visionary approach to the whole town center. It is one of the items that would lead, hopefully if we get all our work done in time, would lead to a warrant article on the town meeting agenda. The 2 outstanding steps between now and then are one is the assessor owes us an assessment of those properties, just a pure assessment. If you recall, the reason to do the RFP is to get more of a market view of it. I should mention that Adam Burney, the land use director and the acting interim town manager, did a lot of good work on that, and it was really, the straw RFPs were very helpful, and I think we'll have something really meaningful to be able to go forward and get data that the town can make some decisions on. The capital planning committee met this afternoon, reviewed the 1-year and 15-year plans of the police department. Chief Marino presented. We have one interim meeting where we're going to do some housekeeping and business, and then the next meeting is the Tuesday in December. I don't remember exactly which Tuesday it is, where we'll do the DPW, both the operations of the DPW, and they're responsible for the building maintenance for all town non-school buildings. So we'll be looking at the Capitol there, and one of the items on their agenda will be the painting of Town Hall.
Again, right?
Okay, interim town manager reports.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I present the report. We have the inventory of town land, which is still an open action item. The board's going to be discussing that in one of their workshops going forward, so I'm just carrying it on the report. The first action item that needs to be discussed is the pay-as-you-throw report that I was commissioned to do. Before you is a report. My findings are that the small bags do tear at an alarming rate. They are not rated for the 30-pound capacity. The larger bags do not tear as readily, but they also are not rated for the 30-pound capacity, so there is a possibility that they could tear when you get close to the limit. That being the case, we have the option to go with a larger mill plastic. The small bags would then be rated at 15 pounds with the larger mill plastic. There's no cost increase in going with the thicker plastic. However, I would recommend that we label the bag at a 15-pound limit so that people are aware that that's all it can hold. There's no additional charge to affix our seal and whatever wording, lettering we want on it. Likewise, we can go to the larger, thick mill on the large bags. It's a very small nominal increase in price. I would recommend that the town absorb that price and not increase the price flow through. I submit my report to you. It has both quantitative and qualitative data. It also has survey results, and it's just an example of the type of analysis I can do if charged to do so. The next issue is Kebabalicious. There's going to be a public hearing scheduled. If you recall, they had until a date certain to get their TIP certification. That's now coming forth for a public hearing. It will be scheduled accordingly. As we've discussed earlier, there is an outstanding issue with the assessors drafting a new RFP. I'm waiting for their specifications, and the specifications, as we had discussed earlier, are in reference to collecting data on the personal property. MCPPO certification, I have completed 1/3 of it. I received notice that I passed that portion of it. There are 2 more thirds remaining, and next week I will be Tuesday through Thursday in Boston doing that, and hopefully pass that section as well. As we've already discussed, the issues with the COA van situation, that's on my report because it's something that I've been working very closely with Selectwoman Luck and Director of the COA as well. Next down, we have the policies that, again, as we've discussed, we have a driver policy that is completed. That will be submitted to the board when we have your workshop, but there are other policies, as you see, that the board needs to address. In particular, I direct your attention to the personnel. The board needs to address the lack of a quorum in the personnel board. It is mandated in our charter, so any major change in that system would take a charter review, but we're dragging our feet through cement trying to take care of these issues because we don't have a quorum, and it's imperative that something be done to move that forward because we have major issues before us, and I can't move them forward.
Mr. Chair, if I...
Mr. Alonso.
One of the things that, in a discussion with the interim town manager, I talked about is, I wondered if we needed to get things done, specific things that required a quorum, to investigate if there was any policy in the charter against appointing ourselves to that in sufficient number to get a quorum, so we could get the work of the town done, so that things don't just lay stagnant because we don't have a quorum. I know in some cases, in elected officials, when this came about with the Parks Commissioners, we weren't allowed to because it's an elected body, but the Personnel Committee is an appointed body, and again, to not get stuck in some quagmire because we don't have people applying, this may be a way out to at least get some work done and not make everything in certain areas come to a standstill.
You have that as an action item to figure out?
I will definitely figure that out. Again, as I said earlier, have an assumption, but I don't want to go on an assumption. That's something that, because it is a charter issue, needs to be matter-of-factly correct.
Okay.
Lastly, we have, well, they're not lastly, but a few other things. The USDA sewer non-compliance issue, it's a matter of completing the forms and getting them in. It's ongoing. I've been collecting some of the data from some of the departments involved. As soon as I collect everything, I can get it to them by December 30th. That's the agreement that we have. 2 other issues. First and foremost, the most important one I have before you is an appointment of Miss Sheila Cragen, I believe she pronounces her name. I have appointed her as the temporary accounting clerk. This is, I would put it as an emergency appointment. We have an issue in the department where there's a vacancy that's going to bring us into the winter months, and the accountant is incapable of doing all of the work without someone putting in all of the input through the Munis system. In looking at the union contract, there's one employee who fits the bill. She can add more hours. She will not incur any overtime. She's the most senior employee in the union, and she has the requisite Munis skills. So I appointed Ms. Sheila Cragen. As I read the town charter, it requires the Board of Selectmen ratify. I'm not exactly certain if that requires a vote of the board. If it requires a vote of the board, then I'll put it for the next meeting. If it doesn't require a vote of the board, I ask that you do it immediately because time is ticking and the accountant is being buried in paper. So I leave that for your discussion and approval, however the board decides to move on.
I believe it does require a vote. If we choose not to vote, then there's a certain period of time in which
15
then it
days,
is
right.
15 days.
But
So
I
we
could get
we could have
quicker.
done it
Right.
tonight if it had been on the agenda. I don't think we can do it. Although it's it's an emergency, so I
Right.
think we actually could.
That's why I put it before you in that way.
I don't see any reason why we shouldn't do it, personally.
It's an unforeseen emergency situation, so I
Well,
think that we could
I've
potentially,
known
we
about
could.
the vacancy for a few weeks. However, I did not know what the result would be until I got town council review, until I reviewed the union's contract, and upon all of that, that's when I've learned. So is it an emergency that it can't wait until next Tuesday? No, it can wait till next Tuesday.
The problem is that's not a
The point is,
regular-
will we be having a meeting?
That's
We don't know
questionable
yet. We don't know yet.
versus the first meeting in November.
Right, if we go to the first meeting in November, the accountant...
Well, 15
is-
days will probably be up by then.
Right. Then we won't even need.
Then we
to vote.
won't even need to vote, but
But at that point in time, the accountant is just getting so
Yeah,
far...
I would recommend, if we don't know, if we're gonna have a meeting next week and we can determine that now, then I say it's okay to put it off. If not, I would say that we just vote on this.
Yeah, noting the emergency situation, I would move that we ratify the temporary accounting clerk appointment of Sheila Cragen.
second,
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I thank
I
the
like
board.
risk takers.
the only question that I would have, is there an additional cost that we need to be aware of?
Well, there is going to be an additional cost because the existing employee, without going too far into personnel issues, is on a medical, so she is collecting sick time. And the replacement employee is going to be picking up those hours, but I have to put...
So I think for a special town meeting, we're going to need to include that in our budget adjustment discussion.
Potentially, yes, we definitely could, but if the board decided not to, I could wait until the end of the year to see where I was.
Right, but
'Cause it
since
might
we're
be-
having the
it might be
meeting...
with- It might be within the whole department budget, moved from one department to another.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Lastly, I put before you in your packets what I call meeting notes. It's just something that helps me stay organized, it helps me follow along. It's something I've done in the past. If it is the pleasure of the board, I can continue it. If one individual member wants it and another doesn't, that's fine too. I put it there before you for your approval if you want it, and if you don't want it, that's fine too.
So I like the notes.
I do too.
I just don't need the extra space for notes,
Okay.
for me to write. I mean, I think that if you have somebody your report, that may be a way to do it. I don't know if other people want the notes on it.
I would agree. One idea potentially is to list the agenda items and then basically have a modified agenda.
Okay.
That included your notes underneath each agenda item, but I don't need the space for the notes. And I
It
think we
shouldn't
could
be 8
save
pages.
paper. I think we could
do
save
it in
paper
quarters of
in one or two.
Right.
But it's very helpful to having the headliners of what are the major
The
items.
bullet points as
Right,
to what
having the
we're doing.
bullet points underneath each agenda item and having that available to us, I think would be very helpful.
So noted, that's why I put it for your perusal. That's my report for this week. I thank the board.
Mr. Chair, I have one question just about the pay-as-you-throw, because we talked about introducing larger bags. I'm assuming this report is not about that is still forthcoming.
That report, I did not get any quotes on the larger bags. I can addend the larger bags. But this was existing bags going with a thicker mill.
Right, I just wanted to not lose sight of the fact that when we buy new bags, we may want to try the newer, the larger
Larger.
bags.
If that be the case, then the board would want to come up with a pay scale, how much you going to charge for,
Well, that's
like,
the-
Find out what
the
they-
previous, the previous town manager had done a whole start of that.
Right.
that-
I was unaware of that,
Yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
I'll
so-
look for that report.
Yep,
And the pay-as-you-throw, it's supposed to be self-funding, right?
yes.
Right, right. So basically where, if we,
It had two components, I should actually interrupt.
The
It has
recycling.
page, right, exactly. The recycling is borne by everybody, because whether you're, everybody can recycle, whether you're part of, you know,
So
whether
that's
you put
paid
out trash or
for
not,
on
so.
your budget.
but, so like if the cost of the trash bags goes up, it should be part of the cost of the bags.
Right.
Right,
Right,
Right.
because the town shouldn't be
right.
paying for any of that.
Right,
Right.
that's correct.
We have how many year contract for waste right now? Where are we?
It's a 10-year
It's a
contract, and I
10-year.
think we're in year 4 or 5 now.
Okay.
Okay, we have 1.5 items left, and the half being determining our meeting schedule. But I did ask that the interim town manager would leave us before we do number 12, but do we want to drop down and do the meeting schedule before he leaves so that we can be sure we're, this is about whether we insert a meeting next week or not.
And I think the question was whether we needed to have it in order to sign the contract for solar.
Right.
Well, there's two contracts before.
Right, there are two different
solar-
projects,
two
one in
solar.
Fitchburg, one on our roofs, and one is dealing with the construction of the entire project, and the other one is just
Just the net
the
metering.
net metering, so those are the two projects we have.
So we would need to have the materials to us by, Monday at the latest, ideally Friday, so that.
Well, we'd want to know if we're going to get them
Right.
before Thursday so that
Right,
we
they can
post them
post it,
not.
right,
Right.
right.
There's no way for me to know if that contract will be all the information. The town council is beaten on that, so.
So I guess we should go ahead and plan on a meeting and then cancel it if it's not ready.
Yeah,
Right,
Okay,
Right,
yeah.
right,
fair
right.
that's safe.
Right.
Okay,
So
So-
where will we meet?
7 o'clock on the,
But there's sewers
No,
meeting here.
where?
at the-
Sewer
Oh,
has
where?
this room.
Yeah.
We can meet at the river.
we'll let you know, probably the Ritter.
Upper conference room in the Ritter's lovely.
Yeah, probably the Ritter.
Well, it should be, I mean, knock on wood, should be a quick meeting. Right?
Last time you said that.
That's right? Well, I didn't say it tonight, and look how it turned out. It's 10
We haven't
o'clock.
met in any of the school media center.
That's true.
That might be a way for you to see the school, by the way.
Okay. We'll find a place, but let's keep the time, let's keep the date. Yep. Okay.
Am I dismissed?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our last,
You can leave everything literally on
It's
the
right here.
table. I
Okay.
presume that you'll be locking up, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, so the last item we have here is to do some prep work for our town manager search. And the first piece is just to reconfirm our scheduling. We're going to notify the three finalists tomorrow and schedule them for times on the 8th and the 15th of November. All right. I have a recommendation, and you can certainly decide what to do. But I think what we've talked about to date is interviews, written questions, and presentations. And I might suggest that we do an interview with each of the three on the first date, which is the 8th, and then schedule a presentation and whatever we're going to do with the written questions on the 15th, if that makes sense.
Can we have the written question answers back, like?
Yeah, we can do anything we
before?
want, but I mean, just in terms of telling them to come in, we would have them come in on the first meeting on the 8th, and they didn't have to bring anything with them. They'd just come in for an interview, and we could let them know tomorrow what we wanted to bring with them on the 15th, so we'll give them plenty of time. Or we could tell them it's due back to us by the 1st, 5th, 10th, whatever makes sense to us. But I'm trying to do scheduling first, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think the schedule sounds great. I would like to see the reports back. I'd like to be able to review that, the responses to the written questions in advance of the meeting on the 15th.
Right. So when do we want them back? Well, first of all, we haven't decided which ones are written and which ones we're going to interview with, but how much time would you like to have them in advance?
With the packet.
If we're going to deal with them on the 15th?
I would think with the
We hand them on the
packet, right?
15th, and they get them to us by Friday. So they
Hand
have
them
Wednesday,
to
Thursday,
them.
Friday, 3 days.
That seems
Like,
quick.
I'd like to-
No, wait a minute. I'm confused.
They were talking about having us.
When do
get them
we
by
want the
15th.
responses to the written questions?
So,
If we're going to deal with them on the 15th?
I
Now,
want them
will-
by the Friday.
On the
I want
Friday
them-
before.
I want them the Friday
Friday.
before.
We'll give them to them on the interview on the 8th, and they'll have,
Okay,
Oh,
that's an extra little wrinkle.
you could give them ahead of that, though, right? You could give them right
you
away,
could, you
right?
could, I guess.
Why not? Because as soon as we know them, why not pass them on?
I was thinking of giving them to them like starting tomorrow. I mean,
Right,
if we know what
exactly.
they
Right.
are.
Define them.
Yep.
Yeah, I would,
You know, do you-
throw
If we have them
there's something about,
working under pressure.
well, that's not, yeah, but working with like an extreme, this is like to give somebody 4 weeks for a written thing, because it may go too much on the other side of things. I understand maybe the
Novels,
3
yeah.
days, because they're working, so they may not be able to do it in 3 days or something, but
Yeah, I think maybe that's 4 weeks, is it 4 weeks?
maybe,
That
well,
might
maybe
be
give them
too
the
much
weekend,
time.
and we have to get them by, by beginning of day on Monday, so we.
Well, we could give them to them now and ask for them back before the first interview, because it'll give you some information,
That, they could certainly do that.
you know.
Or why don't we give it to, I mean, we have email addresses for everybody. We could give them to them on the 4th. We could email them out on the 3rd and say, okay, here's the questions. Let them know that this is going to be the process, that you're going to come in for an interview on the 8th. You're going to receive written questions the first week in November, and you're going to be expected to make a presentation. So we can send them the questions whenever we really want to.
Well, I just don't want to give them too much time to do them. I want
Right,
them
so
back
that
within
would-
a certain amount of time.
Right, so that would give them a full week to work
Right,
on the
a week would be
questions.
fine. I don't want to give,
Yeah.
I don't think we should give them more than a week to do.
Yeah, I would
We're
agree.
going to discuss them tonight, though, right?
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
So if they YouTube it, they'll know what the questions are.
Good.
Well, that's a valid point.
We don't have to say the question. If we
We
have
can-
them all, we
yeah,
can
we
say
have
question
them all.
number 1, 2, 3.
I have them all typed up. I don't know if you do, Jamie, but.
I just have what I sent you guys,
Yeah, right.
all the
Right,
questions.
did you have copies for everybody?
No. I sent it to everybody. I have one.
Yeah, I didn't.
Right,
I
because
didn't-
I'm just saying, 'cause then we could say
I can
question
go
one,
make a
question
copy.
two. I have mine numbered. Do you have yours numbered?
No.
So
I have mine
so
numbered.
how many questions do we want them to respond in writing?
Yeah,
I
right
was-
now, we have 34 questions,
Those are too
and then a
many.
final question.
I was-
So that's a little bit, that's a lot.
They were all great questions, and I really like them, so
I think no more than 5.
5 written.
Yeah, there are some here, I mean, they're all.
I think some lend themselves
There's
to it.
redundancy,
Right.
too.
There's some that require
How many
explanation.
copies?
Right.
For all of us.
So I was actually, before you do that, Phyllis, I
Okay.
was going to recommend, Phyllis, before you do that, I was going to recommend that there be a group of people or a couple of people that take these questions and narrow them down instead of us doing it as a committee. Because I think that the couple of people maybe, what are the ones that are like each other and bring
I
them
think
together?
we should, can we just hammer it out and be done with this?
Okay.
or-
It's
Instead
okay.
of having-
So we ought to say which is verbal question, which is written, and which should be a presentation, if some of these lend themselves to being a presentation. Are we
Right,
going to have them do the
right.
economic development as presentation?
I actually thought, I liked the idea of having them do the economic development as a question. For one thing is that they've already done it, they've prepared it. Is there an extra benefit of making them do another one? It feels like making them jump through hoops, maybe. They're working full-time. And another thing was, I liked reading the economic development plans, and I think if I hear the presentation, now that I already have some background, we'll have better questions.
I
It's
agree.
two
Yeah,
passes
the
through.
only caveat I'd put on that is I think what I'd want to say is the responses to that economic development were fairly general. Okay, what would you do about an economic development plan? What I would like to do, almost for extra credit, if you will, is to say, it would help if you gave some thought to our town in
Right.
particular.
I would
You know,
like it specifically geared to the town of Lunenburg.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
if we do that now, if we let them know now, this is going to be your presentation, but we want it specific to the town of Lunenburg. So that's going to require them to research our
Exactly.
community, to research our buildings. to
So just
research
tweak
our
it, do
community.
economic
Yeah.
But
development, but
not
tweak
really
it.
tweak it. It's really a much more expanded,
Right.
targeted economic development plan.
Right.
I mean, it's going to require researching our existing zoning, it's going to, and to me, requiring our existing regulations and zoning, and to look at opportunities, and how would you approach it? What would be your recommendations to us, specific to Lunenburg?
Yep, to make it more.
We okay with that?
Is a good idea.
Okay for you, Tom?
Yeah, I am thinking it from an applicant point of view, that sounds like a lot of work to ask somebody to do. And,
How much time are we giving them, I guess,
Right.
would be give them an indication?
Well, if we give it to them tomorrow,
No, how much time do we want them to make a presentation? Because
Oh,
we're talking
how
about a 10 or 15-minute presentation, so therefore, it's really, we don't want them to give us 50 pages?
Right.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that goes to Tom's
Right.
concern.
Yeah,
is
right.
that we don't, we want,
well,
I mean, I want somebody to interview for the job, but I mean, if somebody came to me and said, you know, we're interviewing for this job, and by the way, put together a whole, a whole new strategic workflow for technical support and how we can revamp at this company. Like, wait a minute, that's like something you ask somebody who has the job, not somebody who has somebody who's going for the job. So, I mean, you have to make it, you want to test their skills at presenting and their ability to formulate ideas coherently and their ability to do PowerPoint. I understand that. But you have to make it a chewable morsel that you get an indication of, not,
That's fair.
so.
So maybe you could say, if possible, can you think about things that might be specific to Lunenburg? Is that too much?
they've all attempted this at least once.
Right.
So they can refine it a little bit without an incredible amount of work. And especially if we tell them tomorrow that that's the only presentation they're gonna have to do. Yeah, because
It's going
we've
to be up to
said,
them how much they,
yeah.
it's
But
really.
but if we tell them about how much time, then
And what do you
And they
think?
can gear it towards that.
10 minutes?
they should be able to make a presentation in 10 minutes.
10 or 15 minutes
I would
the
say
most.
Because we got three, we're gonna do three of them in one
Up to
night, and then we gotta do
15. I would
some
do
other
up to
stuff.
We want to have questions,
Right.
so we're going to ask them questions for 20 minutes to a half hour each. You're already at 45 minutes apiece.
Well, it's 2 interviews, though.
3.
Three?
no, 3 people.
No, but I mean, it's 2
Yeah.
nights.
Well, we're gonna have an
So the first
interview on night one.
The first night is going to be the questions.
Right, no, I'm talking the presentation. If they do a 10-minute presentation,
Oh, we're going to have
and then we
questions
ask
on the
questions for a
presentation.
half hour,
Right.
that's effectively 45 minutes per candidate. So
I
therefore,
guess I wasn't maybe I'm wrong, but I guess I wasn't envisioning asking a lot of questions at the presentation, because I think that, I mean, granted, there may be a couple, but I thought that night was going to be more towards our opportunity to see their presentation skills, and then the written questions are to evaluate their writing skills.
Yeah, so what are we gonna do with the written questions? Are we gonna discuss them at all, or just have them submitted and
It
that's
would
it?
seem like,
Because I thought we were gonna receive the written answers and have a piece of that second night to clarify or
right.
something.
So
Okay.
you spend
I don't know.
maybe spend a half an hour on the presentation and then 20 minutes on the questions or something like that.
If there are any, I mean, if they did a great job, I mean.
I would say, the way I envisioned it is the first night of interviews, we have the prepared questions for all of them, okay?
that we ask them.
Right.
We asked them, okay.
Then the second interview, they do the presentation. Maybe from that presentation, we limit ourselves to no more than 15 minutes of follow-up questions on the presentation, and the remaining half an hour of any follow-up questions we have in general. I wasn't looking to discuss particularly the written unless there's something that
Okay,
stands
so what are
out.
we gonna do with the written? Just
We're
just
gonna
get the
review it and
data,
evaluate their written skills.
but not deal with them?
No, we don't have to deal with them on the written.
Okay.
Well, but
I
you could,
would agree.
but you could during that last
You
part.
could if you wanted to
In the
bring it
last
up.
half
Yeah.
hour, if there's
During that last half
specific-
hour.
Potentially, there could be another half hour.
The last half an hour is just a follow-up to all the other stuff that came up. What maybe follow-up questions that we've written down after the first interview that we don't, because we don't want to just go through. We want to go through a set amount of questions.
So if you spend 5 minutes per question and you give them 45 minutes apiece, that's 9 questions. we could ask the first night? Or do we want to have, I mean, I know Tim talked about the fact that each person on the committee was asking their question, which was the assigned question, so
Yeah, the way
make sure everybody.
the way that kind of worked though, Bob, just to be specific, is like, my assignment was people skills.
Yeah.
Now, I asked like 3 questions, but they were all people skill related.
Yeah, and it makes sense to ask each candidate the same question as along the way, so everybody gets a chance to answer the same question that we can
Right.
compare each other to. So therefore, we really should pick what are the questions that we want to ask verbally. And that's what I was saying, is that, is it 2 questions apiece that we go, or is it multiple questions at that point? So,
Well, I mean, I think people should also they shouldn't be told, but maybe we should tell them, because part of the process is you want people to be able to convey information, but you don't want to just hear somebody speak to speak. Some people fill a lot of time.
Yep.
Right? So we don't want that either. And there's merits to, maybe we look at the questions and we prepare 15 questions and see how many we go. And we say, okay, you have this many minutes to go through this. Some questions shouldn't take 5 minutes.
Right.
Some should be 2 minutes or whatever.
Right.
well, and do we want them to have 3 or 4 minutes to present who they are to begin with, the
Right.
opening
I would think
statement?
so. I would think so.
So I'm thinking that if we're basically giving each of them 45 minutes, it seems like that's enough time to,
I think if you budget an hour per person,
Yeah.
that's from 7 to 10.
Right, right.
So why don't we give them the first 5 minutes to tell us who they are, why they're here,
If
right?
we can start at 6:30, that would give us some buffer, so it doesn't get so late.
Right.
that's not a bad idea.
Okay, so if we start at 6:30, you okay with starting at 6:30, Phyllis?
Yes.
Okay.
What about 6 o'clock?
No, that'd be fine too. That's tougher for me, but I can make sure I do
6 to
it.
9 is a lot more manageable for me than 6:30.
All right, and then none of them are next door.
Yeah.
They're all coming from,
Right.
okay. So let's say 6 to 9, an hour each. First 5 minutes
Did you take one?
Yes.
is theirs, right? Tell us who you are and why you're here. Then we got to do some questions, which we'll do in just a second.
Not formatted real pretty, but I just printed off that section of the email.
Second meeting, same thing, 6 to 9, hour each.
Sure.
Okay,
And then we're going to have to deliberate after that, right?
I guess.
We can deliberate after that or on another meeting.
Well, I don't
We could add another meeting.
Well, we probably don't want to wait too long.
Yeah.
I think we probably, I'd like to kind of do it while it's fresh in our mind.
Yeah, I think it's good to
That's
do it
probably a
right.
good
And then
idea.
that way, doing it earlier, then it'll give us up to 10 o'clock to talk afterwards.
All right, so the second meeting is, we have an hour each, 10 minutes to do their presentation, and,
Up to 50, I would say up to 15 on the presentation.
okay, 10 to 15. And then 30 minutes of follow-up questions from anything, from the first day, from the presentation, from the written stuff we read, anything we want. So we won't script that as much, it's
Right.
just follow-up, right?
Right.
And didn't we say we wanted to make sure that we get 2 different orders? So in other words, if it's candidate A,
Yeah,
B, C,
right.
the next week we have CBA or something like that, right? Okay. So I'll ask Elaine to do that part, that's the logistics. The other logistic one that I thought of, and I don't know if you think this is too much, but I was gonna suggest that we invite them at their option to contact some of the key people in town, and part of this is we're selling too, but we'll get some feedback from them. So in other words, at their option, they could contact the superintendent, or the police chief, or the finance director, or DPW. I would provide them with their contact information, and say that between now and the 15th, feel free to try to get in touch with them and spend some time, ask some questions, get to know them. Do you think that's a good idea, bad idea? And then we could get feedback, but also those people would kind of sell a little bit.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, and I meant to bring it up, and I'm glad that jogged my memory. So the first thing is, I think that we should have as many department heads present in the first interviews as possible, so that we get their feedback about questions and their reactions to things. Possibly even the second one, or at least submit questions to us if they had something they wanted to follow up on that particularly had, but I think getting the department heads' feedback is important about how they reacted to people and people's responses would be helpful.
So that becomes a public record.
Well, it's all a public record.
Right, but the question becomes for department heads having a public record as far as evaluating somebody that may end up being their supervisor.
Hired.
No, but, I mean, to hear the interview?
No, I'm talking about a written question or evaluation of the candidates.
Okay.
That having your people that you're going to supervise evaluate you coming in creates a dynamic that I think might be an issue.
I didn't ask for their evaluation. I asked them to submit questions that they may want to have answered about.
I said something different, so I hear,
Yeah, so.
Tom's probably isn't an issue. You're suggesting that what I thought might be a good idea could be problematic.
Well, and I don't want to not get the feedback from the department heads, but they have to understand that if they get feedback and they give, say, negative feedback about a candidate that we choose to hire, that creates a dynamic, or if they choose to give really good feedback and, that type of thing. It's a dynamic that we're the ones doing the hiring. We want their input or other things like that. I like the idea of them being here. I like the idea of them offering questions. Superintendent's one thing because that's a non-supervising position.
Here's my rationale, and I think you have a very valid point, and maybe I have to say tough. I think part of this process is we're selling as well as evaluating. And if I was going to take the job, I certainly would want the opportunity to talk to some of the key players in the town.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's what drove that. So maybe I don't ask for feedback. I don't know if that solves the problem.
I think you leave it up to the department heads. I think you give the opportunity and you let every candidate know these are the contact information, and if you'd like to, you have the opportunity to reach out to these individuals. Have them attend the first hearing, and if they have questions, they can ask them. And if the department head chooses to provide feedback, that's fine. If they choose not to, that's fine too.
Right, and I don't think there's any issue with them providing feedback if it's voluntary, and also that they're not the appointing body, so there's no conflict of interest from their standpoint because they're not appointing the person.
And it really leave it up to them. But let them know, the department heads know that they do have the opportunity to provide that if they choose to.
But that it is public.
And let them be aware that it becomes a public, that it becomes.
Because I recognize your point.
Yeah.
If I said something that I thought was just whispering in your ear, and I found out later that it was public information, and the guy I now has to supervise is not happy with it.
Exactly.
That could be an issue.
Well, providing somebody to get up at the microphone or submit for public record their evaluation is problematic.
Right.
But providing feedback, there's other formats of getting feedback, so.
I guess that's the question though, is whether there's people.
Well, of course, the interim town manager is probably not a good idea because he's one of the candidates, but, there are other ways they can submit via email.
But
to the Board of
emails
Selectmen.
That
the Board
becomes a
of
public
Selectmen.
record.
I mean, email is a public record, so.
I don't think we want to set I'm fine with having them contact the department heads, interview them, talk to them, this type of thing. I think that everybody needs to understand that in today's world, if we make a decision based on some feedback and it gets out there, we just want to be out there and say everything's public at this process. And I don't think that people are going to have a problem with that, even the department heads. I think our department heads are willing to provide feedback.
Mm-hmm. But do you think it's an okay idea to encourage them, or at least to give them the contact information?
I think it's a great idea.
Sure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Obviously, we need to check with the
You're asking
department
who
heads.
to contact who, by the way?
The candidate to contact.
Okay, that's fine, as long as it's an address.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And I would make it optional.
right.
And it'd be interesting to see who does it and who doesn't.
Right.
That's a data point.
If you choose to, right.
And is it going to be every department head?
Well, here's my list, and I could ask for input. I thought the superintendent, the police chief, and the finance director at a minimum. But I don't know if you wanted it.
Fire chief.
Yeah, the fire chief.
Okay. I was just DPW director. I mean, do you want to,
DPW director, especially since we've got this whole pavement management program going on. And stormwater,
Planning director.
planning director.
I think that would probably.
I think that's probably it.
Yeah.
Land use director, I should say.
okay.
We all knew who you meant.
But that's the concept of it, more encompassing of more
Right.
departments.
All right, so that takes care of all the logistics. Now we have the task I've been putting off.
Well, it's not that hard. I mean, it's only.
Yeah, so number one, to me, I would make that a written question.
Yeah, why don't we do the written and verbal first, and then we
Okay.
can
Yeah.
then come out afterwards?
All right, so I don't have mine numbered, but are you using the
Well,
same order that I
I
emailed?
gave you a copy.
Oh,
There
okay.
you go.
Cool.
It's 2 pages. You got 2 pages?
Yeah, I only have,
Here,
I just need the second page.
Yeah, I just need the second page as well.
Okay.
Thanks. You got one?
Yep.
So does everyone, I mean, I think number one should be written.
Yeah.
that's kind of a tall order, though, because it's, you know.
But I,
Let's not evaluate, let's
Yeah.
just do then we'll come back, and it's just a suggestion, so.
I'm gonna circle the ones that are written.
right, you want to just go through 1 through 2 and do written or verbal? Go
Sure.
through all of them?
Yeah, that sounds.
So 2, what do people think?
I think 2 is written too. I mean, it's very similar to 1, right? Different, but
3, management is verbal. That
3.
sounds- Working environment.
4 verbal,
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep.
verbal.
5 verbal.
Verbal, yeah. 6, I don't know.
That's verbal,
That's
right?
verbal? Okay.
I could see it either one.
I
okay.
think that could go either way, but,
Well, isn't there resume, the written version of that?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
right. So
Yeah.
should we eliminate that one then? Can we?
No, well, I think it could be a verbal question if we want it to be, but
Challenges.
7, I'd say verbal.
Verbal.
Hold on a second.
that's
Doesn't make
worded
sense.
wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And what did you like, there's an extra,
Take
yeah,
out most and. What did you like least?
yeah.
Well, just take out the first
Yeah.
5 words.
Most and.
Take out the
Yeah.
first 5
Yeah,
words.
right.
Either
One
way,
is
yeah,
what?
yeah,
it's still verbal, right?
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
That could be written, 9.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we can go back to that. That's verbal.
Yeah, 10 is verbal.
I think 11 can be written.
Yeah.
Yeah,
11
11's written.
Yeah.
Industry. Yeah, 12 could be written or verbal.
I think it probably is
Verbal.
better verbal, yeah.
Verbal.
Verbal?
Verbal 13.
Yeah.
Verbal 13. Verbal
Mhm.
14.
Verbal, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely verbal, number 16.
yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that
was
could
a-
go
I
either
thought
way.
that could be a written.
I think so.
No,
You don't,
it would be a huge answer. And for me, I'd rather see what their answer to was on this on the fly than a prepared answer. You could do a lot of research on prepared answers for this. That's just
Well,
my
let's
take.
come back to that one.
okay.
16 and 17 are really
Yeah, they go
one
together,
question.
right? Same
They're
one,
really
right.
one question, I think.
Yes, let's eliminate 17.
And it's
that's
town
verbal.
manager, 18 is TM, not TA.
Yeah, they all should be, all the T's.
Yeah, I don't know,
and TMs,
yeah.
I think that's verbal.
Yep, I would agree.
I think 19's verbal, too.
Yep.
This is very similar to another question we already had, but
Yeah.
Yes, you
20
could
does seem
eliminate some
similar.
things that when they seem
we can
redundant.
go back and do that after, yeah.
Which is it?
20
That's-
seems like it's a redundant question.
You want to just take it out now?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
I think 21's redundant. too.
That's
Yeah.
redundant.
Yeah, that's
too.
redundant
Yeah.
of 3, yeah. Available revenue.
What's 22?
It's,
Verbal?
yeah, it's verbal. Goals. 23 is verbal, it seems like it's similar, but
Yeah, we gotta go back. I think
Yeah.
that's really similar to another one. Maybe we rework it.
Yeah, 24 is definitely redundant, right?
yeah, that's the
That's
same
the
as
one we,
19.
Yeah.
Well, which one?
24,
24.
like
We-
19.
Same as 19.
It's, although that's more focused on town as opposed to relationships.
Actually, 24 is not the same as 19.
so that'd
It's
be
similar, but it's not the
Similar.
same.
Verbal?
Yeah.
I think written on 25.
Yeah, I would
Yep.
agree.
Yeah.
We may have our written questions.
I
Verbal.
love 26, by the way. I think that's a cool question.
That's why it's bolded?
Yeah, I like that one,
No,
too.
it's
know.
bolded by accident.
I would say that's verbal.
Yeah, I would too.
27 would be verbal,
Yeah.
too.
Yep. 28 would be verbal.
Yeah.
I think 29 would be an interesting written question. Potentially.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like 30.
Yeah, I was a big fan of 30. Yeah.
I use that question a lot. I word it slightly
Okay.
differently, but yeah,
That's
that's,
verbal, I think. 31 is about as blunt as they come.
Yeah. So then the answer is take a negative and turn it into a positive.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a verbal.
Yeah, 31 and 32, I think, are verbal. So is 33. 34 could be both.
I think, how many written do we have? Because I think 34 could
Yeah, we're going to go
either
back.
way. Okay.
Yeah, we have more than 5. We need to
Six,
pare it down to 5. We have 1,
6
2,
to 7.
4, 5, 6, 7, with 1 being questionable.
Yeah.
What did we say about 34? Is that,
We-
That could be, go either way.
Either.
So let's just circle it and come back to it, so that makes 8 that we've chosen as potentials, and let's just narrow it down from those 8.
Is 8 too many, do you guys think?
I think so.
You want quality answers, you know?
yeah, I think 5 is probably pushing it.
Okay,
But,
okay.
you know, you could be 4 or 5. I mean, you know, you're trying to ascertain what their communication skills are like.
So I would say number 11 would be the first one I would
Yeah,
choose of
me too.
these. That would be a written one.
Yes, I like that one.
I think
know.
number 1 would be as well.
Now, how are they going to know the answer to number 1?
Right.
They're gonna look at our website, they're gonna look.
Now, how
at
are we gonna
information
know?
About our community.
Hopefully, we know it.
Well, we're asking
I
for
would
their
ask-
perspective.
I would, well, to answer your question, I would change the wording of the question and put the 2 words at the end and say, "and why?" So I'd ask for their explanation about why they thought that.
Okay.
I mean,
And are we going to select that as one of our 5?
But
I
these are
think
not
so.
right and wrong answers. You
No,
want to
no,
see, you
no.
want to see the thought process
Yeah.
behind it.
Right. I think it should be a written one,
Which one?
number 1.
Yeah, I just said that.
Right, and adding the "and why" I think makes sense. And I'd like to see I mean, I'm assuming, just with any other job, if you're going to apply for a job, you're going to do the research on the company. You're
wanna
going to
see
do the
what they've
research.
done.
And that's,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's, I want to see what they think after they've looked at that information. And if they've taken the opportunity to talk to the department heads, that's feedback that they're going to get.
Right, okay.
That's true.
So, number 9 and 34 are very similar, so I would say that we only need one of those two. They're not exactly the same, but they're close enough to make
Yeah.
it the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, take number 9.
Yeah.
I like 9 better.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's 3.
And is number 25,
Yeah, I like 25 as a question.
it's sort of a, yeah, I like that one.
I like that one too, and I think that needs to be a written.
Yep.
So that's 4 so far.
And how about 29? We like that
Yeah.
one.
And that would be 5, I think. Number 2, I would say don't, because I think
Yeah, I
it
think that
goes,
could be
it goes
verbal,
more,
yeah.
it would be more for elected officials than I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so we're going to strike 2 altogether. We're
Yeah,
gonna-
well, we could ask them if we wanted to.
Well, yeah, but we-
It's just not a written.
Right,
So we have question 1, 9, 11, 25, and 29.
Correct.
Okay, so
Are the
those are the
written
written
questions.
questions.
1, 9, 11, and 25.
Should play this number.
111.
Yeah, exactly. Right, play it big.
And I think we have too many verbal questions.
So the way that you could think about doing a verbal is that, do you have a verbal question that you would like to ask?
Right, I think
Right.
everybody should choose their favorite 2 that they want to
Yeah.
ask.
Well, we have time on that, too, so we don't have to do that tonight. Why don't we look at the things we said verbal? Because we're not going to send them out or anything, we just need to have them ready by the 8th.
Right, so we could,
So why don't
we
we-
could finalize it on the 1st.
Yeah, and why don't we think
Okay, that's
about,
good.
you know,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So is
Think
it
about
two
if you feel like
questions
any of them
each?
you wanna
Is
ask
that the
them.
max, is 2
Excuse me?
questions?
I think we should all be ready with 3 questions
I was
each,
just going to say, 3
in case
questions
the time
each.
is available. Yeah. I mean, that's what I would,
So we have to pick our favorite 3.
okay.
And get to fight over them if they pick the same ones.
oh, I'm sure. people
Well,
can-
well, I would come prepared with like 6 that you want.
Of course you would, of course you would.
Already
I'm saying that if Todd's already got the one that I wanted, I have a better.
That's right. That's good.
Okay, so I think I'm ready to talk to Elaine tomorrow and get a package out to them, just to go over it. We're gonna meet with 3 of them on the November 8th at between 6 and 9, 6, 7, and 8, or maybe we'll build some fat in there or something.
Well, since we have these early, if we can get these questions to them by the end of the month,
The written
right, the
questions.
written questions, so that they can provide them before they have their first interview, we'll at least have something to read through. And,
No, I would
you know,
like
just-
to.
Just to get a good feel for them as well as their resumes and the stuff they did.
So let's
for the
have them
school.
returned by, oh, shit.
You want to read them before the interview on the 8th?
Yes.
Oh, well, you'll have them available to read. sure.
Because if we give them to them right away.
If we get them out the 19th or the 20th, let's say the latest the 24th, and we ask for them back on the 4th, how's that sound?
That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would think the sooner the better.
All right, so then the second week,
But what if we do the 3rd? That way they'll come in our packet,
The 3rd, which is Thursday, yeah.
which is Thursday. That way,
Yeah, that
'cause
gives us more time.
nobody's here on Friday, so that
Gotcha.
way we'd get them on
Gotcha.
Thursday and
Good
can
idea.
read them over the weekend.
so the 3rd,
Thursday by,
Thursday, November the 3rd.
by 3 PM.
all right.
11,
Then we're going to meet them
3.
again on the 15th. They're going to have 10 to 15 minutes to do their presentation and a half hour to follow up on anything. Their initial interview, their written questions, whatever, their interviews with the managers or whatever. And then we should decide whether we want to stay and deliberate after that, or whether we want to do that immediately the next week or something.
I think it'd be good to set it up to do that night, with the
Yeah.
idea that if we need more time, we can take it, but if we
Right.
can, we may know
Right.
at the end of that
Right.
night which one we want to do.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
And are we meeting at 6 both nights?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. So we feel good about that agenda topic?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so then, just to go over our meetings, we now have a meeting next week which is the,
Unless we cancel it because we don't have
25th.
the information.
okay, we have one on the 25th unless we are not ready for it. We have one on the 1st, which is a regular business meeting. Now, on the 8th, we have one business item that we have to do that's not going to be ready before the 8th, but it has to be done on the 8th, and that's to approve temporary borrowing for the pavement management program. It's,
And we're
one
also
of
going to
the,
have warrants.
yeah, so we're gonna have like a little piece of business
Sure.
on the 8th.
So you just got to make sure we leave time for that with the scheduling.
Right. But we could do it, it's all public meetings, so we could do it kind of anywhere at the beginning or the end or wherever we want.
Do it in between candidates,
You
while
could do
one
it in
person's
between,
leaving and both
right.
other
Yeah, right.
person's getting
Right,
settled.
right.
Right, okay, fair enough. So that gives us the 8th and 15th. Now, I just throw out there, maybe we're way ahead of ourselves here, but we normally wouldn't meet on November 29th. November 22nd is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Does anybody have plans where you want to meet the 29th instead of the 22nd?
I'm not going to be around the week before Thanksgiving.
So the
Which is what?
22nd, you're not going to be here, is what you're
Yes,
saying?
that's correct.
So I'd rather meet the
I'm on
29th.
the 15th. yes,
Okay.
yes.
So on the 15th, we're also signing the warrant. But we
Okay.
need to, no, the 1st, we're signing the warrant. Sorry, I was the wrong date.
So I'm here the 29th, because the day before.
Well, we don't have a meeting on the 29th unless we put one
Right,
there.
right.
So
I'm
I'm
just
just
saying I'm
asking, do we
available.
want to move the 22nd to the 29th?
I have a conflict on the 29th, but if you move the meeting, that's fine.
Well, I just assume leave where it is. I mean, if somebody's going to be missing either way, it
Right,
doesn't matter.
exactly.
All right, so we won't meet, as of now, we won't meet the 29th, we will meet the 22nd. Okay. Is there any,
So now, if we don't meet the 22nd, then we'll go over the questions on the 1st. Is that right?
What?
No, that's November 22nd, that's
No.
after
That's
the...
if we don't meet the
No,
25th,
October.
If we don't meet the 25th.
I'm coming.
Don't
Then
do
do the
anything
questions
this
on the
Saturday.
1st.
We'll go over the questions on the 1st. If we don't meet
you're not going
next
to be on the
week.
1st.
But I'm fine with that.
You're okay with that?
If we don't
We'll
meet
figure
next
out a way to
week.
tie you into that.
Regardless, I think we're doing the questions
We're
on
going to
the
do the questions
1st.
on the 1st.
Okay.
We're not doing
And Bob's not going to be here, but he's okay.
Yeah, I'll give my feedback on there.
Okay.
Okay.
And then on the 25th, if we're open, that's when the warrant closes. We usually review the articles, but
Where, I'm sorry, what date?
October
the
20th.
25th,
If we have a meeting on October 25th, if they're ready.
We have a meeting next week.
Okay.
Okay.
And if we don't, we can do that on the 1st, right? Or when did it go out?
that's when we sign the warrant goes to the printer on the 3rd.
So we need a meeting the 25th.
Yeah, we probably ought to.
We need
yeah.
a meeting regardless
Right,
on the
okay.
25th.
That solves that. So let's try to have the questions by the 25th too, so we can get that out of the way while Bob's
Let's
around.
do the questions by the 25th.
Okay,
Right.
fair enough.
The hell, let's
Okay,
just choose somebody on the 25th.
is there any public comment from the public? Please, Mr. Rogers.
Give you a lot of credit.
Yes.
I give you a lot of credit for sitting through
I
that.
appreciate your determination.
My Ritalin has kicked. First of all, thank you for all that you do. This is an arduous task. I have two questions for you. Do you know how long the solar project will take to complete?
I don't know that we do, no.
Okay, I didn't either. And I talked to John tonight, and he said 60 days. So if you take the working week of 5 days, you've got 20 working days a month. So that's November, December, and January if you fly. It's got to be substantially complete by the 8th of January. So there's no way in hell you can do this.
Right, which is what we said.
Okay,
Right,
so
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was thinking the same.
I am in concurrence with you.
Can we extend the deadline? What?
It's not the deadline, this is the
tax.
state.
It's the
the
tax, okay.
credit.
It's
Okay.
tax
And the
credits.
program, and the solar program.
Their application, if they
Unless
didn't
the
get this,
legislature extends it.
So my point is, don't waste your time. I mean, anyway.
Even if we signed it
You waste as much
tonight,
time
we
as you
couldn't have
can,
done
but I
it.
just wanted to point that out. The other issue that I have is I have real concern on this Summer Street easement project, and wondered if one way to circumvent the time constraints would be to see if you thought it was valid for the town to give you the authority to negotiate temporary and full-time easements. Because that would...
On this warrant.
Yeah, because that would give you some...
So that's what she was talking about, is that we would have the ability to give licenses for the temporary, which is what we did for the septic system on Northfield Road.
But we can't
But
do
we-
an easement without the actual wording
Yeah,
and the
it-
plan.
town meeting, we don't have the authority to execute an easement without the town being specific about what that is.
Okay, that answers that question. I was just...
I appreciate it.
I'm
I
worried about
just have
that
some
time,
real-
too. Me too.
But I
time
think
constraints here.
the easement process may be the way out, because she was actually talking about having the MBTA grant a license for the temporary easement for MBTA, and then go for a permanent one, because they've got to go through the state process on that one.
Yeah, I just, anyway.
I'm nervous about that time, too.
All right, thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
Good night.
Any public comment from the board? I'll entertain a motion.
Everybody come to the ribbon cutting of the new school on Saturday.
12:45.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.